allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call shows everyone's present. We have some additions to the agenda. Can I have a motion for that?
So move.
A second.
That, for the agenda, if I could, and I don't see anything in here as a report for our committee reports as it relates to the human resources.
We got that as an
It's on the
addition.
additions to the agenda.
That is on the additions here.
Okay, well, when did it get fired out, today or tonight, whenever? I don't have it in front of me.
It's probably in the packet there then.
Look behind your agenda, this one.
We'll share that one.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, though, if there is in the human resources a report, there's two things that I really feel compelled that I need to have the council. One of them is protocol on the final administration resignation checklist. I had asked Rena by email on early this week, no, that was last week, to add that to the agenda. And we had a modified agenda that came out last week. Well, one was on Friday, that came out on Monday of this week.
Yeah.
So this isn't a new addition. This one right here is a new addition, and that's the human resource report here. So in that human resources report, one of them, that protocol for that circulation, the checklist or so, okay?
That issue we covered.
That issue discovered, and that'll be shared. And then designation of a interim acting city administrator. Is that also going to be addressed in the human resources?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Jeff,
Go ahead.
could we possibly talk about instituting city emails for counselors? I've gotten some more correspondence. We
Okay.
discussed it a little bit in the past and maybe under unfinished business.
Okay, sure.
If we could add that.
Email.
Yeah.
Okay, a motion's been made and second to approve the addition to the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
First one is approve the release of Knife River Reclamation Bond for the Mick Pit I-94 construction project of 2014. Number two is closed fund 305, $990,000 general obligation improvement bond 2004-A. Number three, human resources report.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion passes.
And Mr.
Open-
Mayor, point of privilege, please. And underneath the agenda, so I still don't have the other collateral stuff that goes with that, unless it's buried in here?
I don't actually have anything either, if we don't find, we'll address it when we come to it, I guess.
Okay, well, do you have it on that in front of there?
Okay.
I shudder to thought I have to make a decision without proper information in front of me.
That was with this packet here with these. That was with there.
Open forum, anybody wish to speak?
Excuse me for my first night out after my surgery, so. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Vince Schaefer, 541 Caroline Lane, Rockville. I just have some comments about tonight's agenda. The minutes from the October council meeting state, motion by Mayor Hagan, second by Member Willenbring, to authorize the Finance Committee to work with David Drown to come up with a structure that the city will use general tax revenue to make up the shortfall on Pleasant Lake and Prairie Industrial Park, and come up with action codes on allocating staff time to separate also. And that motion passed unanimously. Then I look at item 6A on the agenda is discuss and approve action codes to break out Pleasant Lake water system. But the Finance Committee report is item number 8C. which is after the discussion about the Pleasant Lake system. Does this mean the Finance Committee has been bypassed on this issue? And if so, why when the motion so clearly states otherwise?
Vince, the actual action codes that we came up with is before the council tonight to look at, to approve. They didn't have that last meeting, and the decision, this is all about, and what I want to know is when we're going to start this and how long are we going to do this?
Excuse me, Madam Administrator. The motion clearly stated and come up with action codes on allocating staff time to separate. And that was supposedly turned over to the Finance Committee. So that's all I have to say on that. But I am somewhat encouraged by the fact that after my initial public data request about 7 years ago, I finally got some answers to my questions. And that is, yes, the downtown water system is subsidizing the Pleasant Lake system to the tune of about $85,000 a year for at least 7 years. And that's at a minimum of $85,000 is what I got from the David Drown report. And this was all laid on an additional 288 water customers from the old system downtown that was originally set up as a standalone system. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, next item, consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, before we move, a thought just occurred to me. To appease Mr. Schaefer, would it be appropriate for us to just merely move that the unfinished business discuss approval action to below the Finance Committee? So if the Finance Committee has some input that they can report to us, and then would that solve that?
Does the Finance Committee have some discussion on that topic for tonight's meeting?
Oh, okay,
No?
then it becomes moot. I just thought I'd.
Okay, they're not ready, I guess. No. Consent agenda, need a motion.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second that motion.
Motion been made and second to accept the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Board and staff report, police, we have a contract renewal. You want to cover that first, then we'll go to John's report? Or you want to talk about that, John?
He does his report, and then I'll talk to you about the contract renewal.
All right, okay.
But you stay here for that, John.
All right. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is a report for the month of October 2015. There were 38 contract hours, 16 citations, adult citations were issued. 10 of those were for underage consumption, ages between 18 under 21. 2 of those were a combination of underage consumption and fleeing an officer on foot. That all of those citations were on October 11th. Most of them from a call on Caroline Lane. The other one was from a traffic stop. I assume that was kids probably looking to get over to Caroline Lane who probably didn't make it. The other 2 were speed, and 1 possession of a small amount of marijuana, and 1 driving after suspension and no proof of insurance. There was 1 juvenile citation issued, and that was for possession of drug paraphernalia. Call types for the month of October, there was a stolen vehicle. That was actually at the car dealership here on Broadway. It was actually an employee. That employee was arrested before the dealership could even report it in a neighboring county for DUI, so it was recovered. The stolen vehicle report was more of a paperwork thing than anything. A couple of property damage accidents. The animal complaint was an injured deer. The personal assists were both at 2 separate residences on Lake Road. 4 door checks. The legal dumping complaint was somebody throwing some stuff in a dumpster at the apartments on Burt Street. The complainant there just wanted the individual talked to. There's 2 DWIs, both of those resulting in citations. Did not make the citation report at the first of the month. They weren't entered yet. First one, both of them involved speed and fairly significant speed. The first one was 79 miles per hour in a 55 zone. The other one was 107 in a 65 mile an hour zone on 23. So both of them moving quite along. 4 medical emergencies. The OFP violation was at one of those residences on Lake Road again. Open door was at the house we've been keeping an eye on Lake Road. We've had several calls out there, things going on, but it's been quiet as of recent, I believe. One of the suspicious activities is out there. 2 suspicious items. One of those was a shallow grave with bones in it that turned out to be animal bones. We usually, when we get those kind of calls, we collect those bones, and then we have a professor over at St. Cloud State that identifies them for us. The other item was a gravestone that was found here in town. The date on it was 1955. We had the officer come down and have some contact with city employees, and they identified the last names as previous owners of that building. So, and as unlikely as it sounds, that isn't that unlikely. We do have several other gravestones kind of sitting in the middle of nowhere throughout Stearns County. There was 47 traffic stops and a couple of requests for extra patrol.
Okay. John? Questions?
Just a question about the grave, the bones, where were they from?
The bones were identified as a dog.
Oh,
Close one, Bill, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, John.
Okay, renewal of the contract. Last year, we were being billed $45 an hour, and with this proposal, they are going to $50 an hour. The budget is at $22,800. A little more than what we have in the budget, but I'm not, again, it's very close. So
22.8 compared to what this year?
I think it's 2005.
Okay.
A few percent.
Yep.
Best bang for the buck that this city has for a long time. Move to accept the new policy services for 2016 services fee for the sheriff.
Motion been made and second to approve a 2016 contract with Stearns County for police service. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Welcome back, John.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you could just have that signed and then the original mail back.
Jeff, it's probably in your little red
Okay.
thing there.
Then it's been signed already, yeah.
Okay, I just have to get the sheriff and board chair signatures, and then I can mail you a copy back.
Scan it in, send it to you tomorrow.
Okay. Next item, Planning Commission, Bill.
Well, my business won't be as highlighted as that. Well, we did catch that speeder, though, on one of these variances. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, first one is the Wayne and Susan Hemans. Property address is 25465 on Pleasant Road. The variance is to construct a 46 by 22 attached garage and breezeway connecting the house to the garage on the property abutting Pleasant Lake, which is a recreational development lake in the city. The impervious surface is above the 15%, but yet still under the managed with the, if we can manage the water runoff to be captured. They will construct the garage as approved, which matches the existing residential structure. This property is located within the 1,000 Shoreland Overland District. 18 notices of public hearing were sent out. We actually did receive a letter from one of the neighbors supporting the variance by the McBrooms. Planning Commission recommendation is to approve as presented with the rainwater being captured.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion, please.
Go ahead.
This is the Jimenez, is that how you pronounce it?
Siemens.
Evens.
I mean, there's a vagueness in my mind, and that is when they're talking about an attached garage in your minutes, and I put some notes down here as it relates to that. Something about it's an attached garage, but yet
With a breezeway.
with a breezeway, so,
That's what they mean attached.
and so is there enough space between the garage and then the primary dwelling for fire protection and stuff like that? Because typically, in the minutes, it stated something about being attached, but this would be a detached garage with a breezeway?
If you want to get technical, yes.
Okay, well, it's, you know,
It's a
and so
five,
there's-
it looks like it's about a five
Okay.
foot from the house to the garage breezeway.
I think it's 5 by 10. So it's.
So there's adequate space for
it's
fire
10
protection
foot.
for,
That's the
and then-
requirement.
With distance between
Yep.
the buildings,
Yep.
5-foot wide walkway.
okay, that's
Right.
what. And so by that being detached, and I think I hear Chairman Becker say it's schematics, it's just a technical thing. If it's a detached, then they don't have to go down with frost footings and all of that. Then it would be like a slab on grade garage, correct? Is that?
I don't think so.
No?
No, I mean, I built mine, it had to have
And
footings.
if they have a full frost depth and thermal
Yeah.
integrity factor and all of that, even if it's detached? Okay, well, great, then takes care of my concerns.
Motion been made second to approve the Heman's variance from impervious surface requirements. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
The next is the Travis Coons conditional use permit request. This is what's known as the Barking Birch at 23445 County Road 8, Cold Spring, Minnesota 56320. The property is located in an R2 district, contains 14 acres, more or less approximately 14 acres. 24 notices of public hearing were sent out. Mr. Coons would like to expand the canine boarding business from the present 15 stalls. We did discuss about possibly the increase in traffic on 8 because of the increase of boarding. Neighbors seem to be fine with this. Planning Commission recommendation is to approve as presented. I don't know if you folks have been over there, but it's a very nice place.
Move to approve the recommendations of the Planning Commission.
I'll second that.
Motion been made second to approve the Coons conditional use permit to expand his facility. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Thank you. The next is the David and Francis Lensmeyer variance, and we tabled this to do a site visit. We just didn't have enough information to go either way.
Okay.
The next is a variance request from Sean O'Keefe, who is the owner of 21096 Fowler Road. Variance is for a major shoreline alteration permit on property abutting Grand Lake, which is a general development lake. Sean has actually been working with Stearns County on this request prior to this. And I don't know if you have the letter attached, but there's a letter dated October 9th of 15. Property contains about 5.89 acres, approximately 11 notices of public hearing were sent out. We did not receive any negatives or positives on this. There was some recommendations by Stearns County. Discussed that Stearns County would process as a CUP, but since it's their first time, they went for a variance. The Planning Commission approved with conditions that Sean meet and complete the recommendations as provided by Stearns County Environmental Services. This is a very nice project for their lakeshore.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second that motion.
Motion been made second to approve the O'Keefe Shoreland alteration permit. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
And lastly is the interim use permit from Vernon Sulzel. I hope I'm saying that right. 25940 99th Avenue in St. Cloud 56301. The request is to store wind towers on the property. Interim use permit is being requested and is governed by the following zoning ordinances. General requirements, subdivision 3, outside storage, screening, and landscaping requires interim use permit. The above interred matter was heard prior to city council members on the 18th day of November of 15. Again, the property 25940 99th Avenue. The Planning Commission is recommending approval, although I need to let you know that the last interim use permit was the storing of railroad ties, and that was supposed to be out of there by December, Rena?
Of 13.
13. There's a good number still there. And we currently do not have a performance bond on the railroad ties.
So you're addressing that with Mr. Salzo at their December meeting?
Yep, we're going to talk about that. The conditions of the Planning Commission approving this is that we do have a performance bond of $5,000 for the towers if we have to do any type of removal and things like that. But we are recommending approval. We need to talk about the railroad ties.
The one thing I need to point out, and Bill, this is new since we met last week, they have moved this back to May of next year. So start May 1st of 2016 and go till May 1st of 2017.
Okay.
They were waiting on approval from Burlington Northern and not getting it.
This for the towers?
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you tie the performance bond into the railroad ties and put a deadline on that as a condition?
That would be a question I would ask Rena, or
Right here.
Adam.
Certainly, you can condition compliance with the prior permit on the issuance of future permits.
Contingent upon compliance of the previous, was that an interim use permit that we had for that also?
It was.
Okay,
Now I need to, and I didn't say this, but there is not a problem with the ties.
right,
But you just need to know that.
yeah. And this one has then a time certain that is being proposed from the start of date 1 year later till finalizing, or is
May
there?
1st of 2016.
To
Start.
2/17.
Could we add that? I mean, the interim use permit just lists the expiration date. It doesn't list the start date.
Right.
So if we could add the start date so that it shows that it's a year.
Or a duration of 1 year. So if something
Something.
is stopped before it gets started, we give it a maximum of a year. Yeah, I think that'd be a good condition for us to add,
But do we care when it starts, or do we care when it stops?
as long as it's a duration of 1 year.
I mean, if
A
they,
year, well,
No, you-
I'm just asking that it says something about a year, so there is a
Yeah.
duration.
Very appropriate.
okay. Well, I'm just saying, would we unnecessarily constrain by saying it can't start till May 1st of 16 and go to April 30th of
Not really.
17? Does this say, do we want it to end April 30th of 2017? Just leave it, they want to bring them in early? How does the council feel?
Well, I would just think that you could leave the start date open-ended.
That's what I mean, that's what I mean.
Right?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
concerned about the end date.
1 year start date.
That would be acceptable by chair, it's friendly, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll make a, you have something
Is
else?
this the same property that had the towers for the electric line
Yes.
extension?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so close to the railroad.
This will be his third IUP on that same property.
Yeah.
Didn't seem to be a problem.
No, pays for his taxes, what the heck?
No, I just need to let you know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll make a motion that we approve the interim use permit to expire April 30th of 2017, and if Planning Commission chooses to tie performance on the railroad ties in, they have that authority.
I would say that, I thought we had said that it would be open-ended at the start date and then just be 1 year from whenever they actually start.
Oh,
A duration of 1 year.
So if you want to amend
okay,
that.
okay. Is that what the council must, okay, limited to 1 year.
Yep.
Open start date.
I'll second that motion that the mayor made.
Motion been made in second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion passes.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Next item, Public Works sale of orange truck.
Don?
I got Nick couldn't make it today or tonight, so he sent me a little email this morning. He's left me some information here. It's in regards to that orange truck. A while back at one of our Public Works meetings, we discussed it a little bit, and it's become a hassle sometimes to try and get something done that's wrong with it. So he would like to sell this truck and put the money towards something more beneficial. Like if we ended up with a third guy, there's still plenty of work with alleys, side roads, cul-de-sac, city hall, and fire department that can be done with skid loader and one-ton truck. He's not sure what it's worth at this time. I will check into it if you guys agree, we can take it to the council, next week. But also then, since then, they've had some bills on this. We had to repair this truck. Our last fix on an orange dump truck was 2 weeks ago. We had to have it towed over to Maine International with transmission issues. They found some bad wiring that they replaced and fixed the issue. It was over $600. And there's miscellaneous things that are coming up on that orange truck. We had a few last year in the spring too, so that's why I wanted to bring it forward. And, like he said, we have 2 other trucks that have been DOT'd and seem to be in A1 condition now. And that orange one was sitting all summer with the transmission. It does us no good right now up there. So if we can replace it, he can check on the market what we can get for and use that money either for applying it towards, he said one thing would be to apply it towards maybe a bigger lawnmower tractor so we can cut our park grass a little more efficiency, a little quicker, with bigger, better equipment. So.
Well, I think we should leave the approval of what to do with the funds for a later date.
Right.
Make a decision on selling.
But he just threw it out, some ideas on what we could use that money for.
Yep.
Things that would be needed.
Did the $600 repair the transmission? So it's
I
operating?
don't know if it did the whole thing. I think it's sitting up at the firehouse, so I assume they drove it up there. That's where it's parked right now. Because the other 2 plows are set up for the winter. They've been all checked out. There's basically set up except for the front plow.
Yeah, I think we have to assume that he would have had it repaired, so it's operable, I think, but a good question. But.
Quick, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Mayor, if I could. Donnie, there's nothing in the report of the last Public Works meeting, so if that's been prior to that. And so I'm not suggesting we didn't have proper dialogue, but it doesn't say anything that you guys had discussion about the committee or at the committee about this year. So is it excess? We have 2 tandem axes, we have the 1-ton, so we don't need this one anymore.
Technically we don't need, we got 2, we got
The big tandem axe, the
big
gray.
tandem axle, the single tandem that we just got this past with a belly blade underneath. The 1-ton, you have the skid loader also, and the front end loader up there.
Yeah.
And like this, I know this truck previous already had issues with the transmission and other things, especially in the winter time. So being he had it fixed during the summer, they didn't use it much, it's something that would start, et cetera. So he just thought, bring it before the council. If he could look at selling it, and then when we get the funds, he'll come before us and apply to a needed item that the maintenance department would require.
Yeah. And it's usually, something like this takes a month or so to come through to fruition, but this was the first I had seen it. There was no collateral paper that went with it or something like that. But if Nick feels that we have excess, and I think the mayor made a great point, put that funding right back in there, and then as Public Works comes along and we need it, there's like extra cash that we have. It's like a thing. So I make a motion, we have our Public Works director go through the process, and what is that? The process, let him decide, but how to get rid
We'll
of it?
advertise it for sale in the League of Minnesota Cities magazine, and,
Okay.
I think he might decide, or you
Government surplus?
got to be like a minimum amount that you'll accept.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion been made second to allow Public Works to sell the orange truck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, take it back. Go ahead,
I
Rick.
just wanted to find out, how would we determine how much it's worth? Are we gonna get some type of estimate beforehand, or are we gonna just guess at how much we should be getting for it?
I would assume he can probably talk to Maney or some other truck and what a plow truck's worth. On Craigslist, if you go on Craigslist, I've seen there's how many different cities have plow trucks listed, even on Craigslist, from a single axle, from a 1997 to whatever, that they're selling on there for anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 or $60,000, depending on the size of the truck.
That's a big range, that's
Yeah.
why I'm asking,
Yeah.
couldn't we get an idea of what it's actually worth?
I would think so.
Yes.
Remember
say we-
telling them that? I mean, we know what we paid for it just a few
Right.
short years ago, and so,
I would just suggest we ask Nick when he comes back with the results of what he
Right.
sold it for to provide his evidence or his support for why he should accept, why he accepted that amount.
And there's another
He can do the research.
Another venue is through the League of Minnesota Cities has a listserv entity, gov surplus equipment, and you can ask for sealed bids. You know, if we go through that process, that would be another way of doing that, you know, or that if somebody's interested and they see it listed as for sale, and then they can put a closed bid and have a date. But that's what good staff takes care of that.
Motion been made and second to allow the Public Works Department to sell the orange truck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Rena, just make a note to Nick to have, when he
Yeah.
brings the report back, to provide some support as to the price he accepted. Fire Department, request to hire replacement retired firefighter.
if you remember, Ralph Walsh retired this past June or July, and they're down at 19 right now, and they want to at least get it back up to 20. We actually do have a person that did apply without us advertising, a person that's been very ambitious and has gone out and gotten all that training himself. Just out of the clear blue, that's a lot of training. But their request is just to approve going through the process, authorizing the process.
I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion made and second to allow Fire Department to hire replacement firefighter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Next item, Rena, is this action code's going to take a while?
Well, I
Discussion?
don't think it should, we've been talking about this for a number of months. I don't know, about what it would take to break that out.
Okay.
So what we did was set up a whole bunch of action codes for you, and that's what you have before you. Tell me you have that,
We have that?
okay?
Yeah.
Because that was just done this afternoon, that's why I'm really surprised you had, Dwayne, you have it though.
I have it in here.
And
Yep.
you don't have the rest of the stuff?
Well, I might have. I didn't see the agenda,
Okay, all
but
right,
I'm
all right.
cool. I'm cool.
All right, good. And then we marked down the areas where we know we're going to do percentage. And we really took some time going through bills, codes by codes, coming up with new codes, seeing how it would fit in. And there's the list for you.
Okay.
The questions then I would have is, will we start this on January 1st? I want that, we got to know that for a fact, we're going to start that. The budget, of course, doesn't have anything in that for these codes, right, because they're brand new. And maybe we do it without anything, and then after 6 months, you'll know how much to put in a budget.
So, but Rena, if we're just tracking it, still be the same account, stuff like that? There's no separate accounts that are
No,
set
it's all
up?
in 601.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But it'll
So it's
have
just a matter of
different-
tracking it.
The action codes, that's
Right.
those 3 digits at the very end of the,
Yeah, and it looks like very methodically, if you had, for instance, the core city, and the next number you put PLLK, Pleasant Lake, and it should be fairly simple to staff-wise to, when they make that. The question I would have, and it looks like a percentage, so of those, locates, so somebody, and so if Nick gets called for locate, to go out, if it's a locate for out there, or locate in the metro area, or it could be someplace where there's no water, but if it's for water,
Exactly.
then he would then, in his time card, fill out, or
well,
whoever
he will
does that.
code the bill and he will keep track of these
Right.
locates.
Okay.
How
So
many
that,
gets
but
from that
yet you,
area?
and I'm just using that as one, for instance, locate. So what about gas and oil? So when they're doing their morning rounds,
Isn't that a percentage on there?
yeah, there's a
yeah.
percent. And I guess the question I have is, what would be the appropriate way of analyzing that percent? Is it based on the amount of water consumption? If we use 90% of it here in the core city and 5% or 10% down there, would that be the rationale?
They could probably use mileage, how much miles it
Well,
takes to
but
check
all
one
of
right
the
in
costs,
the
you know,
core versus when you go out to Pleasant Lake. There's a difference between your pump house and what you would drive. If you drive from your maintenance building in the core city to the pump house, to pump house in the core city versus driving from your maintenance building to your pump
It's a good
house in Pleasant.
question.
Although I know, I mean, at one finance committee meeting, we had some conversation. I mean, at the risk of not making this so complicated, so do you look at a basis of saying the revenues, sort of corresponding the revenues with some of these, if X percent's coming from Pleasant Lake and X from the core city, do you just apply a percentage? Because otherwise, we can spend a whole lot of staff time
I agree.
to track things to a level on some of these line items that aren't huge line items that I think we may spend more time than what the line item
That's exactly
becomes worth. And so how do we do it? And I guess you could send it back to the finance committee to ask us to look at it, to come up with a reasonable basis for a percentage to me that makes sense on some of these without it creating that we need a half a person to just track the time, because that just sort of, to me, defeats the purpose of doing it. We don't want it to cost more. So I think when she did this, it was looking at what are those ones where specifically we can tell,
Right.
and then what are other ones where they put, gas in the truck or postage for something, or, some item that's not either, it's not a huge item, or to split it out doesn't completely make sense, because it's a
Mr.
lot
Mayor,
of
if I
tracking.
could, as it relates to Member Palmer's thing, a prime example, postal meter rental, which is a cost that's derived, or dues and subscriptions we
Right.
belong to. I mean, a percentage, and I think that's the question that I ask of Rena, is there a formula in staff's mind that if it's based on total amount of, we have 272 residences or meters. Do we base it on meters? Do we base it on volume or something? But there should be something that would use as a simple
Right,
percentage,
right.
like 10% and 90 or whatever magical number for all these nebulous little things. Gas and oil, I think, is a little different story, but office supplies, how can we go and take and
Yeah.
split up
If you
office?
remember that study that was done when Amy Gerger was still here in 2009,
Okay,
it was done for 6 months, and the percentage at that time was 6.17%. I mean, I can't imagine it's.
but there was a lot less people, so maybe a 10%, but somebody could
So
make that
something
rational.
around there,
And
probably,
say
yeah.
10% goes to, 90% stays with the core city of these nebulous little training and all of those things, because Sue's right on. I mean, we don't want to have a half a staff time person devoted to try to analyze how to split that up or something like that.
No, I mean, I think the goal was to look at the really large items.
Right. And
And
if-
make sure that we're, covering those, but, and then a
Electricity.
reasonable basis for the rest.
Electricity,
Yep.
chlorine, right.
I just wanted to comment, Sue, you weren't here last week and it,
Month.
or last month, I'm sorry. Last month, and I did quite a bit of research into the water systems that we have here. It is included in the consent package here for last month that we just approved. It's Exhibit B. And this is the research I did, and it's clear that, with the wellhead protection plan the city has, it states that the city of Rockville has 2 separate municipal well systems. And then you can read through the rest of the report there, and all of the minutes showed right from the very beginning of the development, even before it was developed, that Pleasant Lake system was designed as a standalone system. We're looking at council action to determine how much each system is costing. So my question I asked last month, and I ask again this month, when did they get combined? What council action was taken to combine these two separate systems into one system. Because now we have all of the information that Vince and Audrey were requesting for how many years here. How much is the core city subsidizing that system? It's very evident. It's been subsidized for a long time. The 2011 debt study said at that time it was $125,000 a year. So I have that one question. When did these two separate systems be combined into one water fund? This has been the standing argument for, I've been here for a number of years.
I would say right from the onset.
Yeah, well,
It was designed as a standalone system.
well, you can't criticize this council,
I
predated
looked-
this council.
We're trying to
Probably
fix
was
it.
set up that way from the very start.
Rena,
When did that system go in?
2005.
5,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right after the merger.
Jeff, you and Don were both on the council at that time.
yeah, yeah. I don't have perfect memory. I imagine it was proposed that way by engineer, legal counsel from the
I'm
start.
thinking when it says standalone system, it's a standalone, there's a water tower, a system over there. It is not connected to this system downtown.
Right.
Yeah.
That
They're
is standalone.
physically not
We have
connected.
one water fund.
Right.
5:18:05 minutes. Rick Packer has worked with Scott Headland in designing a water system. It is a standalone system paid for by those that it is serving. Paid for by the people it is serving. That's what the core city water customers have been arguing the whole time. How much are we paying down here for that system that we're not connected to? It'd be the same as if a homeowner was having to pay for his neighbor's electricity. Wouldn't make any sense. Why would these customers downtown have to pay for that system when they benefited from it in no way?
I think what we're trying to do, though, is separate it and correct it going forward. So I guess I'm not totally seeing your point, Rick,
Why
because,
did they come one?
well,
It's a
I
simple
guess
question.
partly
Why
I think
did
what
they
difference
come
does it make? We're trying to fix it,
Said from the onset.
Back.
so.
We'd like to see some of it come back.
I can see you're not thinking that it's a problem, but every water customer downtown that I've talked to thinks it's a big problem.
So out of the Fund 601, just so you all know that there's that water tower out there, the Walnut Circle Water Tower. That is Fund 311. There's also transfers made out of 601 to that fund. There's transfers that we've made payments for the $105,000 PIP. That's the extra oversizing of the water line.
For industrial.
And
park.
so if all the money those people have been paying over there, they've been paying into the 601 too, maybe some of their money's going that way too. I don't know, I think we should move on. I think, are you agreed that we're going to go forward with this? Or do we want to keep arguing the same point over and over?
I'd like to add one comment, if I may, at this point that's relevant to this, and that is, we're talking, I think, not taking the wind out of the sail here for Mr. Tallman, he's talking about the operations and maintenance, more so than debt payment, but yet there's been journal entries that shows that there's money coming
It's
from.
really the debt load that's being funded.
Well, at the debt load originally, and I believe if I see this right, there's an item of the agenda near the end about the Archon development. The game plan back in 2005 was to pay for that with the new construction that was coming on. And we learned a lesson. When I say we, meaning the governance group of the city of Rockville should never go out there and have that kind of a debt load if the developer goes south on us and does not play the sack and whack. And that's another issue that we're in the middle of at this stage of the game, and we can't say anything more about that because there could be pending litigation. But if we look at that dilemma being taken care of, to a degree, some of this would, but yet Mr. Tallman is correct, that there has been an injustice that's done. And what's behind us, we can't change today, but we can certainly continue to have that so that there's some kind of an mutual respect for each other, not this council, because we didn't make that decision, maybe one or two, but it's not the current administration that made that decision or something like that, and it's been going for a long time. So I believe if it has to go back for another continued study with finance and people that are concerned about it, go that route. But we as a council tonight, it doesn't do any good to sit here and argue for us for a long time. We accomplished what the council did. It didn't go the proper procedure. I believe Mr. Schaefer shared earlier, it was supposed to go to the finance committee, but it didn't. It went from staff directly to us, and we as a council now need to agree with or disagree with what is in front of us. And I think this is a huge step in the right direction that we're starting to monitor to see what it is. And then once we monitor it for some time, then we can, the council at that point can determine, was there an injustice done? And if there is, how do we rectify it? But tonight, we can't do that because we don't have that information. But I think this is the right step, percentage-wise, and ask staff in those nebulous little things, let's use a percentage. And I think that we should allow staff, and if it is Arena, the next one, or the interim, or however, to come up with this and continue to have that dialogue. That's how we work these things out, so.
So
Thanks for those efforts,
If Rena's
Leah.
at, I would make a motion to approve the action codes, knowing that we need to still settle on a percentage.
And hopefully by next month or in the foreseeable future, before it
Right.
becomes implemented, that we know what that percentage is, if that's the first of the year or however that we're going
The
to.
motion, are you making a motion here now that says?
I am.
We're going to start this
As of January 1.
first, okay?
Okay.
Sue, did I hear you? So that it's implemented, at the time it's implemented, we'll know what those percentages are
Yes, yeah.
and circulate beforehand?
So hopefully next month we
Yeah.
know.
No, well, with the turmoil, and not turmoil, but the
So-
movement
And there
of
won't be a
staff.
sunset, of course, obviously
Yeah.
not.
Right.
That's fine.
The purpose of this code is to try to quantify the extent that the downtown water, people in the water system may have subsidized or had subsidized that system. And that's what the goal of adding all these action codes is try to,
Just, they want to know
This point
exactly what
forward.
that costs
and
out
and
there.
to correct it going forward. So, I mean, I can understand, I mean, I remember David Rounds making the general statement that cities try to set these kinds of systems up without dividing the city.
Yes.
So the fact that this one was set up and tied to an existing water system, I got to believe probably isn't that unusual for cities. Now, that doesn't mean I disagree that maybe because of the circumstances and the timing of this, because it, occurred right before the downturn in the residential market, so there's been lack of assessments and hookup fees and all that stuff to help make those payments, that this council or future council, once you quantify what that extent of that subsidization has been, that maybe there can't be something put in place where that portion or part of that portion is allocated to all the taxpayers in general, which again some of it would fall back on the people down in the city because they become general taxpayers when it comes to subsidizing the shortfall too, that, this council or future council won't make a decision that, hey, we have to start reimbursing those people for those 7 years or whatever that they subsidize it by contributing towards their water rates or something and reduce it or some fashion, returning that. But, until we can quantify that, I don't know how we do it. But this seems to be a step in the right direction.
I will second that with the action codes, but I would like to, have discussion that I don't think we're looking at this just to determine. I think we're looking at this to try and, from this point forward, keep these two systems separate as far as what they cost to run. Because as I've stated right along, it is not fair for people here to be on the hook for paying all the expenses for that system that they're not hooked to.
Yep.
Yeah, and I understand that. I mean, That maybe didn't state that, but I presume that was.
Once we determine, and if Mr. Tallman is correct, that we see that there's a major challenge in how the costs versus the services rendered, the committee at that point needs to and listen to their constituency. So I think the foot is still on the throttle at this stage of the game. We're not putting on binders or something like that. But this is the first giant step to rectify that. And I agree with Mr. Tallman, and that is that the problem isn't going to go away. We need to keep addressing it until eventually there's some resolution. But this is the right step, so when the time comes, I will vote for that.
Second, okay. Motion been made and second to accept the action codes for breaking out the Pleasant Lake water system. All in favor, say aye.
Effective 1/1/16
Okay.
and no sunset.
That wasn't in the motion, though.
Yeah, it was.
That we know that hampers staff to make sure that they have that in front of us. We can research it, and if we're not ready on that day, we can
Well, then we
table
can
it.
amend it.
Their
but-
percentage.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
very good.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Next item, special meeting notice policy.
Yeah, this came up at the last meeting.
Yeah. This
Member
has to-
Tallman had provided me with the Minnesota statute, and so below the actual statute is the recommended policy.
Comment?
Yeah, maybe I'll read it. What's in bold here, Rena, is what you're proposing to be the
Yes.
policy?
Yep.
City of Rockville hereby establishes a special meeting notice policy in that 1 year from the date of council acceptance of a petition to receive notice of special meetings, the notice shall cease to be mailed if the city did not receive written notice to continue the mailed notice after 60 day, or after,
Should be
should I say 60 day
Yeah.
notice of expiration date was sent to the individual requesting such notice. Holy moly.
Yeah, it's a lot of writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would want to comment that I thought that was very confusing, and I think it could be very simplified. First, I wanted to point out that council does not accept and have the responsibility of sending special meeting notices. That's not our responsibility. That is the responsibility of that is the responsible authority under Chapter 13. And requests do not have to come in on a petition. The one last year just happened to come in on a petition. Any individual can ask for special meeting request or special meeting notice. And there again, that is turned into the responsible authority. 13D04 subdivision 2B, the notice shall also be mailed or otherwise delivered to each person who has filed a written notice request. So the definitions under chapter 13, 13.02 definitions, subdivision 16, responsible authority. Number 2, for statutory or home rule charter cities, the elected or appointed city clerk. And then 13.025 subdivision 1 data inventory, responsible authority. And it keeps going on and on about the responsible authority. So the responsible authority is the one that has to do that, and it's not the council. Council doesn't come and accept a request for a special meeting notice, and the council has nothing to do with that. That is all the responsible authority, and that responsible authority in statutory city is the administrator clerk. So I just simplified your wording there and made it very simple. The city of Rockville hereby establishes a special meeting notice policy as follows. Number 1, each request for written notice of special meetings will expire after 1 year. Item number 2, each individual that has submitted a written request of special meetings will receive a notice no more than 60 days prior to the 1 year expiration as a reminder of the expiration. No, that number 2 is a requirement by state law, which you can read right above at the top, item F. So it's just kind of a courtesy. I mean, I would think that if somebody was requesting special meeting notice, you would tell them right up front, just so you know, this expires at 1 year. We will send you a reminder before that 1 year period, no more than 60 days. I mean,
That's state statute.
Is your provision number 1 that you're recommending, is that the request has to be in writing?
each request for written notice of special meetings will.
Should there, I would think we want to require the request to be written.
Oh, of course, yeah.
A phone call
Oh,
or
God, yeah.
We would-
passing in a.
I would say ask Adam, does it have to be a written request?
Look at the statute. A data, I mean, city can adopt policies fleshing out a data practice request. I'm not sure when it comes to meeting notice, special meeting notice, what the,
Well,
Oh, yeah,
even if
that's-
it,
That's the top one, 13D04 right here, subdivision 2, item E. It's a public body may establish an expiration date for requests for notices of special meetings pursuant to the subdivision and require refiling requests once each year.
but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the question is, does that request by that individual have to be in writing?
yeah, and I would
I
just,
don't know the answer to that. I suspect the statute doesn't say, and
Yeah. Well,
my guess would be, without looking at the statute, is that the city would have the authority to adopt a policy similar to what.
I mean, since it says refiling, that almost sounds like something written, but.
Yeah,
You know, Mr. Mayor and council members, you know, just by the vagueness of the way it's written right now, and that's now a reflection, it's just one of those weird things I think it needs a little bit more thing. Can we just table, I'll make a motion to just table it for time certain until we have appropriate drawing that maybe Adam could go and draft up something that has King's English to it, and then we can ratify it at that point. I think the concept is appropriate to allow individuals to be known that the charter or the statute states that we can't just stop that service without giving them the opportunity to continue to ask for that service for another year. That's the way the statute states.
yeah. Well, I mean, we can give Adam some input, as long as we talked about this line. Rick, did you just say something that the city can establish a policy that notices of requests have to be made by a certain date?
That's the top of the
Yep.
page up there
Okay,
in yellow, the very first one, E.
all right.
And that's what
It's
That's what she's
expiration.
asking here, for us to establish a expiration date.
Why, I guess, no, I have two issues. Why wouldn't the council, in order to help its staff, monitor this, want to establish an expiration date? Secondly, why wouldn't we want to have it in writing rather than submit staff to somebody running them outside the meeting here and say, by the way, I want you to send me written notice of all special meetings from now on. Let's make it have to be written, and let's set a date that they have to be in by.
They'll scatter during the whole year, so it's not like.
But I think Jeff's suggesting, well, they could, but I think he's saying, could you say they need to be in, can you say they need to be in by December 15th for the next year or
Well,
something?
no, that won't work, because that's not the way statute allows, no. And
that what you're thinking,
and some
Jeff?
people will ask for only if it's got something to do with the fire department. The next one will say only when it's got to do something with the water. That's the state statute. So that's our obligation as a city to give that special service. So that's customized. We can't change that. Talk to your legislature. But we as a city have to abide by state statute. But Jeff is right, our mayor's right, so that we don't have an enormous amount of burden. There's got to be a trickling system in place that says, okay, we have 60 days before this, staff sends out an email to the individual, says, do you want to continue to be on that special needs list? If not, you can request to be off. It's got to be something simple like that.
I wouldn't even be against having a form. I'm totally for having a policy,
Yeah.
but just something simply worded, not this word.
No, I agree, simplicity is, so I guess I was confused with Sue's suggestion why that's a no. You can't establish a date?
not for
No,
the
not global.
coming year.
No.
No, you need to be able to somebody wants to request notice of special meeting, that if there's a special meeting that next week, that they get notice of it, not that they've got to wait until.
Okay, what is this E actually stating then we have in here? A public body may establish an expiration date for requests for notices of special meetings pursuant to this subdivision, require refiling of the request once each year. Underscored as a public body may establish an expiration date. What does that mean to you?
So they're saying you can establish an expiration date down to a year. So it's a rolling year that they're referring to, not a calendar year. Rolling year tied to when that request was made. Somebody can make that request and it's good for 1 year.
Oh, the expiration date is, I thought, an expiration date where all the requests had to be in for that
If I
following.
make a request tomorrow, a year from now, it would expire.
And it couldn't be less than 60 days because it's a city.
Well, you have to, the 60 days tied to the city providing notice to the individual.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
is about to.
So the city has to leave it open at any time
Anytime
somebody can
during the
make a
year.
request.
Correct.
We can just put an expiration to that
1 year
longevity of
after.
And I
that
would
request.
encourage the expiration.
Yeah.
1 year after it's accepted.
And that's standard in a lot of communities. It's just that we have to then, it's the onus of staff or the onus of the city to let the person know that 60 days prior to that, within 60 days of the termination date, that they have to. It's not the individual's job to keep track of that, it's the city's
Rick?
job.
What did you say again?
I would think that if we had a form, and I think the
No.
form could be very simple, and then even on that form, just a reminder that this will expire 1 year from this date, from the date it's submitted, and per city policy.
Yeah.
And then a reminder of that expiration will be sent out no more than 60 days prior to the end of that expiration. You want the actual words of what I wrote down here?
Yeah.
Okay, the city of Rockville hereby establishes a special meeting notice policy as follows. Number one, each request, I guess we could put each written request for written notice of special meetings will expire after 1 year.
Yeah. Of acceptance.
And then, well, you don't have to accept it. They turn it in. There's no acceptance.
Yeah.
They turn it in and
Yep.
that's all they have to do. And then the last would be just each individual that has submitted a written request of special meetings will receive a notice no more than 60 days prior to the 1 year expiration as a reminder of the expiration.
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Conceptually, but we still don't have some of the, would it be wrong? I'll attempt it one more time, please. Let's just table any action on this here. We conceptually all agree what it is. Let's have Adam go and write up something in King's English that we all understand. Next month, when it's in front of us, it's going to be very, very easy.
I'm just going to say, do we need to have our
King's
attorney?
English on there. Rick's
think we do.
English is good enough for me.
I think what Rick just stated was pretty good there.
I guess
on
I'm
that.
Okay, then put it on paper, I'll wait. Put it on paper.
Put it in a form, put it on a form like Rick suggests. Ask for an email so that we can send notices out by email and make it easy for staff.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Rather
send any
than
written
having
out.
our attorney
Here's-
spend time, can I ask
I just
Adam, do you
add
see
that.
any issues?
I'll vote
with
against
what-
it.
I think that language works.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept.
Wait, now he made a motion to table. Does that die for a while?
Well, it died because of lack of a second.
Yeah.
So I am now making a motion to accept Rick's language.
I assume Rick will second.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Before we do, there's discussion. What am I voting on?
I just gave it to you.
Rick's
Precisely, word for word.
Rick, you want to read it again?
Okay, let me read it again. The city of Rockville hereby establishes a special meeting notice policy as follows. Number one, each written request for written notice of special meetings will expire after 1 year. Number two, each individual that has submitted a written request of special meetings will receive a notice no more than 60 days prior to the 1 year expiration as a reminder of the expiration.
As per state statute. Okay, can we add that? That's a state statute. We can't deviate from there.
Right, and
Okay.
I didn't,
You
that
did.
doesn't deviate. It's
Okay.
just, item number 2 is just a courtesy. It is required by state law, and it's just kind of a courtesy to show that I'm okay with having it state that per state statute at the end, that's fine.
That's
If-
fine.
If you'd
That's
like to
fine.
amend that,
I'll amend that.
I'll second the item.
And there-
To add,
And now there will be a form that collates with this so that we can see that.
yeah.
It's going to be user-friendly for people to be able to understand what they have to do to get into it.
Well,
what they
that
have
was
to
a
do to get out of it.
suggestion. I don't think we have to provide a form, but I think if we want to, that's
I
fine.
think it'd be pretty easy.
I think it's paramount for us to make it
Yep.
user-friendly. I'm ready to vote.
Motion been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Next item, transfer B's off-sale liquor from Big B to Little B.
Big B to little B.
That's a good one.
Oh, Jim and Brian are here.
And it's right in front of us, yep.
In this case, maybe it's Little B to Big B. Stand up, you guys.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Okay.
I move for approval. Move the liquor license to Mr. Brian Bell.
I will second that.
Motion been made and second to approve the transfer liquor license to Brian Bell. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Welcome to Rockville, Brian. You've been here for a long time.
Why don't we do the emails, Rick? City email discussion?
Yeah, no, I didn't get extra copies here done. I had contacted the league. And they had, the League of Minnesota Cities had replied back to me that they have a booklet concerning council using city emails. The booklet states, starting on page 21, another thing council members should be careful about is which email account they use to receive emails relating to city business, because such emails would likely be considered government data that are subject to public records requests under Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. The best option would be for each council member to have an individual email account that the city provides and city staff manage. However, this is not always possible for cities to do due to budget and size or logistics. If council members don't have a city email account, there are some things to think about before using a personal email account for city business. First, preferably only the council members should have access to the personal email account. Using a shared account with other family members could lead to information being inadvertently deleted. Also, since city emails are government data, city officials may have to separate personal emails from city emails when responding to a public records request. Second, if the account a city council member wants to use for city business is tied to a private employer, that private employer may have a policy that restricts this kind of use. Even if a private employer allows this type of use, it is important to be aware that in the event of a public records request under Minnesota Government Data Practices Act or a discovery request in litigation, the private employer may be compelled to have a search done of council members' email on the private employer's equipment or to restore files from a backup or archive. And the last sentence here, what may work best is to use a free third-party email service such as Gmail or Hotmail for your city account and to avoid using that email account for any personal email or for anything that constitutes an official record of city business, since for anything other than that of city business, using that for just city business. And I think the reason I wanted to bring that up is because there's been so much in the national news about all the Hillary emails and all that, and it just seems like we need to, I had made my own R. Tallman Council at Outlook, but we need to have this so that if a records request came in, staff can handle it.
It's in the budget already,
Oh, is it?
$50 per person per year.
That we would have a city-sponsored email address for the mayor and 5 council, or 4 council members.
Yep, it's in the
Heading
budget.
in the right direction. Yes, it's time.
Okay,
All right, that was an easy one, so. We're gonna start January 1st then?
We'll get something set up.
Okay.
perfect.
All right, next item, I don't have anything. Finance Committee, have anything? Rick or Sue?
RTCP has nothing.
No, just the finance committee, just so everybody's aware, we did meet tonight. We accepted the bank and investment reconciliation, but we also had a discussion about the money that the city puts into the Fire Relief Association. And I think one of the things the fire department had said, we haven't increased their hourly rate, and there was a wish that we were putting more into the Relief Association. And so they came with some information about other cities and what we might be moving it to, but we're doing a little more looking at it, and we'll bring something back in December, just so you know, but just a heads up on that.
Okay, thanks, Sue.
I'm sorry, Sue, so it's the portion that the city gives, or
Yep.
taxpayers paid through the budget process
Right.
to the Relief Association?
Correct.
Okay, nothing to change the hourly wage or something like that of the standard meeting. So that's a separate
That's a separate thing.
group, got it.
That's
Yeah, a separate entity.
That would
Yep.
be, the payment would go if the fire department folds, so there's enough money that the firemen are vested would have.
When they retire,
No, vest, any fire, if the fire department folded as of today, we got so many firemen that are vested and have time, that there is enough money in this fund that those people have the money come, will get it. And that's what it is, so, and they had proposals on what, like most of my firemen, well, speaking, I should say mine, being an assistant chief, would like to see, instead of this hourly wage, there's more of a benefit, because a lot of cities, when 20 years come in, they're gone. And at what they're got here, most of these people, I don't think are gonna stay on, because an hourly increase is nothing, because if you go to a fire, you're losing money from no matter where you're working. So part of, like Sue stated, they're gonna review all this, but most of the wishes of the firemen I have talked to is to get a retirement comparable to some of the local cities. And right now, we're the lowest on here by $1,500 for service.
We're not lower by $1,500 than the average. We're low, we do
are low,
$1,500.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
have-
saying we're not low. That's why we're looking
Yeah,
at it.
so that's what
So-
it's most of the firemen are concerned about. The more
it would be-
retirement versus hourly increase.
it would be a mechanism to make, to allow people, or give the incentive for them to continue to be a fire person because
Sure.
of that
Right.
potential.
Right, 'cause you get-
So it's like dangling the carrot.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Got it.
Could I add that what we had already looked at, we have $5,000 in the budget already, in the fire department budget. And that would bring us to all the presentations that we had there, we could get it up to about 1,800 right now. That's why we had decided that we're going to look at it a little bit further, we're gonna try and get it to 1,900. Because otherwise, to get to the 2120 that was being proposed, we have to come up with too much money, we don't know where.
Yeah, every year you have to come up with that
Yeah,
money.
Through
I understand.
attrition, through
I
attrition, a
understand
couple
that.
years.
Right.
Yep.
So I just wanted to let you know that we're trying to reach the
Yep.
1,900 right now, and that's why we have to get
Yeah,
through the
I-
budget probably with Rodney and
Right, we need
see where
to,
we can get.
Donnie, we're heading, that's a good point. We're heading in the right
To the
direction.
point
though.
what you're going,
Yep.
because there's a lot of us are, I think I looked at 8 or 9 of us probably within, that could retire anytime now. You know, it's going to benefit any younger ones to keep them to stay on. For me, I'm
Yep.
close to the end to it, you know. If it's a little more, fine, but if it stays here, that's what we're going to get.
I mean, as Rick mentioned, the challenge is where we are in the budget
Yeah.
cycle for next year.
Yeah.
So they made a request for more than that. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
basically have to find it out of another line item if we're going to go beyond the money, the 5,000
Yep,
that's
gotcha.
already in the budget. So conversation with Rodney and a little more looking at it, so.
But we did just save a little over $3,000 in the front
That's-
doors.
that's-
that we didn't have.
Well, that's a separate issue. We're heading in the right direction.
So
And we're in a-
that's it.
one more process.
Good point.
We have submitted a grant application for some tools. It's submitted, and they're reviewing it right now. If that comes through, there'll be for some equipment, hopefully we get it, it'll be substantial savings. That's all I know on it right now.
Next item, administrators correspondence. Rena, you got,
Under my correspondence, Mayor and Council, we did get this grant from DEED for the sampling equipment at the lift station down here. And as part of getting that grant, we have to do a 50% matching thing. And so I need to show in the actual budget, which you have a copy of, that we got a line item of $60,000 for equipment.
for any equipment, or?
Well, it's gonna be the 60,000 matching.
For that.
For that, if it's gonna cost us 120 for the sampling or the flow meter down here.
Okay.
And you know, Stickney Hills is also, they're seeking the same grant to get equipment at their place.
Okay.
Several months ago, we made that decision to go forward with that grant application, and this is our
This is our obligation.
Our obligation to
They need to see
match.
it in writing that, yes, we are committed to doing
So you can
this.
do that for 2016 budget year?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
and done, so we don't need any council
I
action?
just need a council action that, yes, when I send this guy tomorrow, Jeremy LaCroix, yes, you know
Council
that.
action to allocate
Say that you-
$60,000? Okay, also move.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and second to allocate $60,000 to match the D grant. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if this is the right way to put it on machinery and equipment.
Oh, that's a good point. The
And
one time.
I'm wondering if we couldn't have a different line item for this. It's kind of a one-time
Right,
Yeah.
money coming in. My fear factor is here, like what happened in the water fund when the bond payments were not stated correctly in the budget, and then that was corrected, and that difference was put into repairs and maintenance, and it's never come back out, and the repairs and maintenance has gone up from $8,000 in 2011 to $32,000 this next year. So I'm not wanting to see something like that happen again, and that's why I think maybe a separate line item for that would be more appropriate.
One-time capital improvement?
fine, I don't care, it's,
You could just
You're
create a
done.
line that
Right.
says grant match even,
yeah.
very clear.
Or grant match, yeah, something to ear tag it so that next year when we were looking at it, and said, oh, that's what that was for, or whoever the finance committee. Yep,
Just label it deed grant.
yep,
Okay, I'll
Match.
that's a no-brainer.
amend my motion to reflect
Yep.
that clarification.
I second that, or I also agree to second that.
Motion made second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion passes. Next item, Robert Oakvick, petition to vacate roadway.
I don't know if all of you remember, but this is before your time too, Adam, when Jim Morgan was here. We had just finished doing Hubert Lane, the Boundary Commission, and at the same time, we started out going further east on Mitchell Lane. The situation there is, those people actually have this road that runs in front of their houses on the lakeside,
Yep.
and they're using the traveled Mitchell Lane where it is currently right now. We tried to start getting, to see if people would want to spend the cost of just getting that whole thing abandoned, so that when they sell, they got clear title. But we didn't get enough people to sign any kind of petition. The Oakvicks are at the very end of Mitchell Lane, right next to Hubert Lane. Are they here? Anybody here?
No,
Thought they might come.
no, they're
Dave,
not.
help me out here if I need you, okay? They have, what they had at one time was like 3 lots. Maybe not all considered buildable. Part of their property is on the other side of that little walk bridge. They have got some idea, well, they did apply for and pay for it, and you may have to pay this back. They paid for the sewer stub-in. Okay, that means that there's a spot reserved for them on that main. People who did that signed a form, they paid for it. They did. So they had 3 lots, and possibly the other probably could be 2 lots, but I don't know. By the time when and if that would ever develop, they sell it and they say, well, yeah, we'd like to subdivide this now into 2 lots instead of 3 lots, or, combine them. That takes all, also has to go through zoning. But part of this they want to do is, they think they own the creek. They want to take the bridge out and have that rebuilt so the person that buys that last lot can come down Hubert Lane and access that lot from there. Dave, is that about it?
Does that, I guess, Rena, does that mean, so right now there is a path, so you could actually go all the way around the lake, right? There's a path that
can.
goes on their
Yes.
property,
Yep.
across the bridge and
Yes.
around, so
There is.
Yes, there is.
that would continue, or that would end? You would not be able to go all the way around the lake with this petition?
From my discussion with Oakvix, they have been through, they've been talking to regulatory agencies about the possibility of getting access over that stream, that outlet to Grand Lake. I believe it's an outlet.
It is an outlet.
Yes. And they did miss the Army Corps of Engineers, which is probably going to be their biggest hurdle. But really, irregardless, the issue that I believe we're on the agenda for tonight is the vacation of the existing roadway that runs on the lake side that you couldn't drive it if you tried right now based on the number of trees in the way. So it's just, the road really is.
So it's not changing that path
No, it's not
and the
doing anything
bridge?
to that path. I was just giving you a little
Yep,
more
yep.
background to it
Yep.
because I think that may come sometime in the future, all right? The process to vacate that road in the front is a resolution? That's what so
There's
it's,
either, there's one of 2 ways, by petition or
Petition.
by majority council initiative.
But I think that we had that discussion. I don't think we wanted to vacate that roadway because that was our leverage to require them to have that walking path there because they wanted to cut off access
Right.
for people walking around the lake.
no more of that history then.
And that's what the compromise was, that the city still could put that road back in affect all those people's properties. And we used that to have the Oakvix allow them to move that walking path back away from the lake as far as they could along that wetlands area there. So if we vacated that roadway, and they'd come back and say, hey, we're not going to let people walk through our property anymore.
Well, they could certainly grant an easement in favor of the city for the walking path.
Yeah, we'd have to, yeah,
It would be pared down to whatever the,
yeah.
Well, I would think we would
If
want
the
something
city
like
would-
that, not just,
Would the city ever want to continue that roadway all the way through, only move it to the backside, and then it would line up with Mitchell Lane? And so would we want to require an easement that's wide enough to put the road back and connect in line with Mitchell Lane? If they're going to they're looking to put a bridge wide enough for a car across, that's what they're wanting to do?
That is what they're wanting to do, and my concern was, if that is going to happen, the city needs something to say about that bridge, because even though it's installed as a private improvement, those have a habit of becoming public property, and we don't want that. So,
Mr. Mayor, that was in a boundary, and you're right with your thought process. It's been a long time ago in that boundary commission. I served on that boundary commission, and I don't recall if I was a council member at that time or not. It's been a while back, but Sam DeLeo was instrumental in putting that all together. And in that dialogue, you're right on. There was something that we, as a city, were concerned about, and I think Jeff's right on with the thought process of, there was a reason that we didn't want to give that up. And anytime you go and have a vacation of a road or a easement or so, it takes a public meeting, correct? By state statute?
hearing.
Public hearing, I'm sorry, a public hearing. Yeah, so I don't know if what is the request tonight for us to work on something, or is it, because if it is, we have to have a public hearing anytime you vacate public property.
They must be just looking for some direction at this point.
Yep, they've signed a petition. They are the sole owners of just their portion.
Yeah.
That's it. Is this something you want to get into or not?
I think,
Obligation to act on a petition if it's a.
It is a petition, they are 100% owner.
a key individual would be Sam
And
DeLeo.
we have to act on that petition?
You-
So
At some
Accept
point,
it.
whether it's,
Okay.
when was that sent in? Have act on.
It's dated October 28th.
October 28th.
Front, yeah,
Well, we received it on November 2nd.
November 2nd was stamped, yeah.
So Dave, is it your understanding that they want to extend Hubert Lane across the creek and make that a private drive at that point?
That was the intentions they expressed to Nick and I, who met them out on site.
Yeah.
And I guess I just have a question about, somebody said they want control of the creek. And and that's not considered their creek right now.
They've gotten a lot of opinions that says it is. They're missing a couple crucial ones that I asked them to check on. It's probably immaterial for petition, but yeah, it's certainly.
No, I'm just thinking it has implications for the lake potentially, because it is
Oh,
the
no doubt.
outlook for the lake.
No
It
doubt.
is the outlet.
Yeah,
I don't see how that's not a public water.
It is, and
that was exactly.
there's a lot of stakeholders involved in that
Right,
one.
right.
The Corps,
Well,
watersheds.
my opinion is I wouldn't vacate that road unless we got,
I agree.
we got equal land on the other side of the house and the future ability to connect Hubert Lane with Mitchell Lane,
Yeah.
because who knows what 30, 40 years from now. I mean, there was a talk when we did his boundary commission of moving Hubert Lane up on the hill, and
That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
There was all
which
kinds
I
of things.
think we should have done, but, you know,
And that was that used to go across there years ago.
Years ago, they
you know?
said
So-
it was a bridge, yeah.
yeah, I think if we need to take action on it, how would we?
What do we have to do to
The law, if this is a valid.
petition?
I don't know the answer to that,
Okay,
Okay.
actually what your job is and whether you want to kind of consider that, take action on whether to accept that as a valid petition or not. That's step one. If it is a valid petition, it has to go to a public hearing. You don't have a
Yeah.
choice in that matter.
That's right.
Upon conducting that public hearing, and there is a vacation request by petition, there's a number of obligations that those petitioners have to meet. They have to serve notice on neighboring property owners.
okay.
That's been done yet. They typically wouldn't do that until you accept it as a valid petition. And then that starts the whole vacation process. But before you even get there, you got to determine whether this is a valid petition or not.
Well, how do we do that?
Well, they are 100% property owner, the only one,
Okay. So you're,
That's-
For the vacation of,
just in front of their house.
and the vacation statute has grayness to it. So it doesn't just say adjacent, I believe it says impacted. And so that is a lot of cities interpret that broader than just people who abut it. It's people who are in that general vicinity. So I don't know the layout. I
Yeah.
can't-
yeah,
I'd suggest continuing it.
Well, and
quite
it's-
honestly.
It seems to
suggest
me
what?
if the road continued, if there's more properties impacted, so while I understand Rena, he's the sole owner of that piece he's asking
one piece, yeah,
vacated.
right.
It connects
To
to
another.
other parcels, so to vacate just one parcel when the city still has road
Right,
rights,
so-
right? Further.
and that is the
So, I mean, I guess to me, that's a question, is that a valid petition to say we're just picking one little section, or in fact, does it have to be everybody who's impacted by it? Because that would seem kind of odd to say we have road rights through here and just not one little piece.
Okay,
So to act on it just in and of itself seems, not reasonable.
Okay.
And if we deemed it to be not a legitimate request, then there would probably be an appeals process that they could go and bring back and prove to us that they think it is an appropriate petition.
I suppose they could file some court action, but more than likely they just resubmit a conforming at that point.
But they'd probably do some research, because there's a lot of players in this thing before that gets resolved. When you're talking about public waters that goes underneath, and the land on either side of it does have
Yeah,
a
and
lot of
then there's
stakeholders.
a vacation request of public right-of-way that's adjacent to public waters. There is a notice requirement to the DNR.
Mhm.
City can't take action until whatever that notice period passes. But again, the first step is determine whether this is valid. I don't know.
So you said your question is validity because it doesn't, it may impact, you don't know the layout, but I think Sue and I and a lot of people do. It impacts more than just their property. So knowing that, can you determine that that's an invalid petition then? Because it doesn't address all the other impacted properties, or?
Well, or I guess I
Or
think we
notice
should
it.
ask Adam to look to, because I guess I don't know how we determine if it's a valid petition
Right,
or
I'd rather
not. So,
have
so maybe we,
the ability for staff,
Yeah.
whether it's me or Rena or Dave or a
Yep, yep.
combination, to put something in front of you to support
So-
your determination.
so maybe we just move it to the next, if we have 60 days, we still have time
Yeah,
to move it to the next council meeting.
Yeah.
All right.
I just think a brief summary, I'm not real familiar with all this, but it sounds to me like we have a platted road that's going right through here. We're all property owners. You're on the end, you want to vacate yours.
Yeah, that's-
Ours are all still platted,
Right.
and.
And then there's a creek right, and then there's a creek
Correct,
right here.
Yeah. And the fact if it's,
So,
and the fact if
I
it's,
think we just put it till next month. We
and if
find
it's
out for
approved
sure.
or unapproved is irrelevant. It's still dedicated, even if it's not improved.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you've got our direction
Motion,
then?
table action.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to table it to the next meeting.
Second, third,
Motion
support.
been made and second to table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion passes. Next item, Rena. Sue Ellen.
Sue Ellen Purley, this is the cabin or the house out there on Grand Lake Road, which last meeting we denied their permit to keep that accessory structure on the lakeside. They moved it from the one lot right next door to the next one, and we denied it. It was, the planning commission recommended you deny it, and you also denied it. This is her response to the letter I sent her. They want a little more time to get that moved up. I gave them 30 days, and she feels that there's more that you should know about this. They will be around, I think, either latter part of January, first part of February. They'd like to come to a meeting and address it with you.
Which property is this?
Yeah, Farmer Bob's, they bought Farmer Bob's, and it's the one right on the west side.
It's a shed?
They moved the shed right in the front, the
They
lakeside.
brought it in.
Yeah, they just moved it from Farmer Bob's lot, because if you remember Farmer Bob's, he has
Yep,
this
yep.
long cement driveway down to the lake in
Right.
here. He had
Oh,
the
that-
shed sitting right in front of
So
it.
it's off of Grand Lake Road.
Yeah, I remember.
Yes, and then they moved that shed over to the neighboring lot, which they also bought.
Okay.
You know, a whole load of landscaping, even though I have dealt with these people on numerous occasions, and it was documented that you had that in front of you, that they knew that they were exceeding the impervious surface.
Okay. And they came to the planning commission and asked for a variance, and it was
And then
denied?
they
And
turned
then
them
the
down.
council acted on it.
Yeah, we did
and
last
denied
month.
it.
Denied it,
And it was,
okay.
is there a safety concern, or is it being used right now, storage or something like that?
Yeah, they've got storage in it. They never presented me with a site plan. It just showed up, and then, you know, trying to get information out of some people. They live in Chicago, by the way. Yeah,
So their request is to stall the,
hold
They
off
wanna
on
come-
the
they wanna-
removal.
and a plead in front of the council and give some other information. What choices do we have? Do we want to go out there and bulldoze it over? No.
Yeah, they're not
The
gonna,
request is to delay removal.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yep.
and you got
when
this,
do they wanna come back in February?
Latter part of January or February. I'd say your February meeting is probably when
They're not
they'll
gonna,
be here.
they're not gonna move it. I guess let's give it to the end of
Yeah,
February, let
yes.
them come back and,
Okay.
that would be my motion.
Yep.
Extend it
I'll
to
second.
February 28th.
yeah, extended what the time.
Motion been made second, to extend the deadline to February 28th, 2016. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Additions, Rena. First one is approved release of Knife River Reclamation Bond for Mick Pit.
Dave drove out and looked at it and said he thought it was restored to better, if not the same
That's good,
condition.
Move to release.
I'll second. Motion been made second to approve the release of the Knife River Reclamation Bond. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Item 2, closed fund 305, 990,000 general obligation improvement bond, 2004A.
That's paid off.
That's paid off, okay. I'll move to close fund 305.
I'll second. What bond was this
2004A, $990,000.
for?
2004A, I think it was PIP.
For industrial.
Yep, okay. Motion been made second. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Human Resources Report. Sue?
All right. So I guess several things on here. One would be talking about, we did advertise for Rena's replacement. So we wanted to talk about the process a little bit. And Jeff, city staff has looked at all the applications. We're required to sort of score them. Jeff and I separately, because we got here different times, have reviewed the applications, and we came up with a list of some individuals to interview. So we are suggesting we schedule a human resource committee meeting. We plan to interview, is it 3 people? We will then forward our top 2 candidates to the council for a council interview by the entire council. So that is the process we're looking at for that. I know, Dwayne, you had sent a form for when somebody leaves, sort of, we have a form we use in Rockville in terms of a checklist about what we do. I know you sent another form as well, and maybe there's a way, there's some things on that one I'm not sure actually apply that you sent, but, and some of them are duplicated. I don't really have an issue if we want to just look at, are you suggesting we need to adapt our form or
No,
fill out both, or?
If I can short circuit this here, that was geared more toward if somebody is either death or is asked to leave. In the resignation checklist, in my estimation, should be very, very simple. The important reason that I felt compelled, and that is before I left for the business trip to the National League of Cities, I had requested the League of Minnesota Cities to give me any collateral white paper that would help us, and they sent an email. I forwarded that to Rena, and then I said, here is a checklist, and you're right on, Sue. That checklist was not nearly as germane to there, so if you'd allow me to, I just circulate this one strictly for purposes of guideline to make sure that when we go and have the final Rena's leaving the area, and that we don't miss something. So that's where this is slightly modified at this point. I'll give you a second while I circulate this. And that was the intent, so that it looks like, with the dilemma that we had. Oh, wait until I'm back. Here, Rena, this is for the public to read. I'll be back in a second, so if you have any questions as it relates to that. I may, what prompted it, I was not aware that you were going to have a human resources report this evening. And so when I got back, I fired off to Rena. I said, in my absence, has anything happened? She says, well, we know there's 13 applications, and I believe that staff had, and maybe Jeff, you were involved in it, to critique some of them that didn't qualify.
Yeah.
And they were eradicated, and that's great. You know, we have better things to do than to go and try to do all of that. And then it came a step further and said, oh my God. So middle of last week, we got back, Diane and I got back Tuesday, so it was Wednesday or something like that. I sent an email to Rena, and she fired back that we have a checklist, and that checklist one that she had didn't seem quite germane, so that's why I modified that and got this one right here. And I just want to make sure that when we have Rena leaving, that the public, and certainly for us five who are in the governance of the city of Rockville right now, that we know that we did everything that was appropriate. Now, the fortunate thing I want to, again, reiterate, and it's not that we're asking somebody to leave or that there was a death or something like that. A resignation for going into retirement is a very easy way. I just want to make sure we won't miss something. And that's basically the one thing I had. And then the other one, if I may, Sue, and that is the designation of an interim acting city administrator. I have no idea if there was dialogue at this stage of the game. To my best of my knowledge, there was no Human Resources Committee because there was nothing vetted properly that I'm aware of that there was a Human Resources meeting.
No.
And so having stated that those duties and responsibilities, and maybe you guys that are on the Human Resources can give me some guidance to say, who is it that answers, or who's at the helm when Rena's leaving Friday night? So on Monday morning, when somebody calls in and says, who's in charge? That's probably a bad choice of words. Who is it that we have as our designated acting city administrator, the duties, the responsibilities that go with that, and then whoever that person is, and I'll make a friendly suggestion, I think it's Judy. That's the most logical one. Has she been asked, would she accept that position as an interim? And then the responsibility that goes with it, and then the compensation. Because she's taking on additional responsibilities, there's also additional compensation that we should be giving.
Well,
So that's kind of where I was at.
I have a different thought.
Okay.
And that is, and I'm looking at Rena, but I think, I know at least when I came in and looked at the applications and having had a conversation, I think that Rena would be willing, I'm looking at you, Rena, I think Rena might be willing to stay until we hire a replacement if we so ask her, if we ask her to do so. And so rather than putting in place an interim, I think if she's, hopefully we can keep moving this process along. We're hoping to schedule interviews for next week. We would bring 2 candidates to the next, I guess we could either at the next council meeting or schedule a special meeting.
I would think you would schedule a special meeting.
And so we could keep moving this on, but if Rena's willing, I think that that would be a great option. We have a very, very small staff. So while I think Judy, I don't know if she'd say yes even, but I think we just don't have a lot of people to do the work. And so if Rena's willing, I would make that recommendation.
Seems kind of bizarre that 2 months ago, there was a resignation, and it was going to be a time certain of this Friday, that nothing has happened, no meetings, as I understand it, no human resource meetings, nothing has happened in this process?
No, we did. We posted, and we were accepting applications, so
Yeah,
there's a process
you posted
involved
for,
there.
yeah.
We've come in and we've, reviewed. So all of that takes time, and frankly, and I was not here
In separate times?
Yeah, at separate times.
Okay.
Completely different times.
And so there's no,
I came in prior to the last planning commission meeting and
Okay,
went
yeah.
through all the applications.
it's a sign of all of us being busy or something like that, and I was out of town, and I guess, quite frankly,
Well,
when
I
I
was
came
out of
back
town
in.
for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I
so
heard that.
That
Hope you had great traveling.
impacted it somewhat, so.
Yep.
So it's not that nothing's happened, but it takes a while by the time you advertise, accept the applications,
Well-
go through the review process, so.
Well, I'll go on record and quite frankly, what's behind us, we obviously can't change, but to select the next city administrator is a monumental hurdle for this city. We'll never be able to replace Rena, you know, the institutional knowledge that she has, but we can find someone and continue to groom that individual, he or she, until such effort where we're going to go. Now, granted, on Monday morning, I bet the sewer will still go to Cold Spring, the water will still going up, and their bills will be paid. So for us to turn around and at this stage of the game to go and deviate from the request that our city administrator had would be kind of odd. She shared with me she was going to start writing a book, and I asked her on Monday morning, and she didn't share, but I'm assuming that she wants to retire. So for me to turn around and say, let's hire Rena back, that's not at all in my thought process or something like that, as I had shared with you guys. And I think we have to be more encompassing, more transparent. Accountable is accountable. That's why I did this here, to try to prove accountability, to try to prove transparency. And so for us to have the Human Resources Committee to go and make that decision to crop it down to 2 in black or white, and you have a choice of black or white. I haven't seen any of that information. I think I have requested of Rena, please allow me to be involved in this process. I don't know if Rena conveyed that to the 2 human resource staff people or not.
And Member Tallman had asked to be at least able to attend the interviews. And with
Okay.
that, we would add to the bottom or the agenda that a quorum of the council may be present, but no council action will be taken. That will be
Unless it's
added.
properly vetted. It's so simple. Just tell the world we're all going to get together and we're going to look at all these people. It's so simple. It's so simple. League of Minnesota teaches administration that all the time and teaches it to us all the time. If you want to have a city that's going to be backing what you do, you have to do it transparency. It's really simple. I'm going to blow my mind and I'm going to just
It's not
quiet.
being transparent, but I think for this sake of some of the people who apply, I think to make it a completely public process, and there's a reason we have a human resource committee. So, I mean, I don't see a reason to have the entire council vet every single candidate. There's a reason we have a process. I mean, so I think of my experience at the college. I mean, we would not have everybody look at every single application.
And I've had a lot of experience, sorry.
Valid use of people's time. I mean, there's a reason we have committees to do it.
And I've had a lot of experience in human resources, and I too have believed that.
I absolutely think the
Okay, I'll
council
let you
should have a
finish.
choice in
Allow me
candidates, which is
rebuttal.
why we bring more than one person forward.
No.
I would like to say that I would suggest that we set up a committee for this. I mean, if you have a human resources committee of 2, the committees of 2 are kind of, everybody that's been on them kind of feels like this is strange. We should have more that is more available, even if it's not council members. It's interested citizens that want to be in the process, because hiring a new city administrator is a big responsibility. Cold
Huge.
Spring has not replaced theirs yet, and the rumor was, or the word that I heard is they're still not expecting to hire anybody until next year, maybe. So it's a process that could take a while. I think having more than a committee of 2 involved in the process, because hearing that there was 13 applicants and not knowing any of the qualifications, and it's cut down to a few of, 3 now? I'm really curious what the other 10 that were eliminated had as qualifications. What disqualified them? I don't know, because I wasn't allowed to be involved, and I asked to be involved from the beginning. And as a council member, I thought I should at least be able to view the applications that came in. I'm not asking to do anything else than see what the qualifications were that disqualified them. And we had the fiasco with hiring
Oh, Roger, the Public Works. Oh.
Works Director that
Rick, I think you're out of line by making that statement. You made it a fiasco. There was no fiasco.
The city staff, Mr. Mayor, the city had enormous amount of challenge with that, and I think we all agreed we learned something from that process, but let's not go back to that scenario or something like that. But
You speak for yourself. You learned something from it. I'm glad you learned something from it.
Well, my opinion on this is, I've been on the council for how many years, or off how many years, and we have several people on human resources. That was their job. They were directed to look at the applications with maybe some city employees to get their feedback, and there's so many criteria that was required of the administrator. If they didn't meet it, they laid it to the side, is what I assume they did. It's no need for me. I don't want to look at 13 applications.
yeah, neither do I.
We get down, they've got the 3 down here now, and we're going to interview. They'll interview, we can have the council president interview, we can see what they have to say, get a kind of face-up look at it, and then let them go further down, then we'll make the decision. But that we should spend time and have, you want to look at all these applications? No. That's what a human resource is for, to narrow it down to who we want and who we need. That's the way I look at it, and I think they're doing a fine job. They're out of town, and with a small city, we don't have much staff. Rena will be gone. Now, if Judy doesn't want to do this, we have to make a decision on, do we want Rena or somebody to come back and help her out? Because it's the end of the year. There's lots of, I know we got to pay, all our firemen get paid, everybody else end of the year, and there's some auditing with the water and et cetera going on. So we have to come up with somebody that will do that. And we also have to give this person notice so they can tell where they are if they're working, so they can retire. And I agree, Cold Spring just had their ads in the paper again for administrator. And I think they were going to look at maybe the president administrator, maybe a councilman or human resource. That's all that was going to be involved with their looking at the applications. So Sue and Jeff now, they're setting up a meeting. We're down to 3. If we want to participate, we can go and ask questions. That's the way I'm going. I'll maybe try and get there and ask some questions, because I can tell, I was a super at one time, I can tell by looking probably the person, if they were working for me, you can tell generally by their impressions, if this is a person that's amenable with other people and so forth. Because that's their priority, is to get the person that we want, and then we are bring their presentation forward to all of us here, and we will decide if he, she, qualified to do the job, and will they take the job per the compensation we offer.
Actually, just one clarification, Don. I mean, I agree with you. If people came, if council members attend the human resource meeting, they basically can observe.
Right.
They cannot ask questions other than Jeff and I.
And I will say, when you have a quorum there.
Yes.
You have an open meeting.
Correct.
Right.
And you're gonna have the public there. Oftentimes, cities utilize the process as you described Cold Spring, where you have a committee.
Right.
Somebody that's, you're able to do that process with that initial pool in a manner where folks' information is confidential. Oftentimes you have people who are currently employed applying and they don't
always want their information public unless they're a finalist.
And so, and the law says, once that pool is winnowed down to a finalist pool, whether that's 2 people or 20 people, their names become public. And then typically cities are conducting the interviews of that finalist pool collectively as a council in an open meeting. That's typically a second interview.
So a concern is, I mean, we could, if we basically make it an open public meeting, we may actually have people who may choose to withdraw from the process. And I think frankly, that may hurt our application pool.
On the opposite side, it would be baptism under fire, so that we could see how somebody would perform in public.
But I think that's
As a city administrator,
completely-
you have to be able to
But
perform in
Dwayne, for
public.
somebody who's currently employed, and it's not uncommon that people don't want it, they might not want it known that they're even job hunting unless they're gonna be in the finalist
course,
pool.
yep.
So I think that's completely unfair to say, we're gonna make it public right away before they're even in the finalist pool, just to see how they act in the public. that opportunity will come if they're one of the finalists.
I don't think that was ever advocated, that the 13 people that were out there after was determined which one didn't qualify. The remaining ones aren't public knowledge. I have no idea who it is that's an applicant at this stage of the game. And I don't know if other council members, I mean, the two of you on Human Resources know.
That's it.
And staff does.
No, but I think what Adam's saying, though, is if we make the Human Resource Committee that every council member shows up, it also becomes a public meeting and anybody can attend.
That's correct.
And therein, for that initial, that first interview to narrow
Of the
it
finalists.
down. No, of the first interview that the Human Resource Committee is going to do. If council members show up and it becomes a public meeting, then it becomes a public meeting. So we're suggesting, let Jeff and I do the initial interviews as the Human Resource Committee, and then it comes back to the council with the finalists.
Two candidates.
Two candidates.
And if the
How
council
do you
doesn't,
circumvent what the state law tells you? If you have a human resources meeting and it's not a standard meeting that's allocated like a monthly meeting, or if it's a different standard meeting, it's not an emergency meeting, right? So if it's a standing meeting, don't you have to go and tell the world that we're going to have an HR meeting? And anybody can come to that HR meeting, correct? How do you circumvent that? That's the state
It's a
law.
special
That's the
meeting.
state law.
It's a special
Well,
meeting,
no,
it's
no,
not a regular.
not necessarily, and I'm not sure, cities operate kind of in a spectrum here when it comes to meeting. There are standing committees.
Yeah.
Clearly subject to the open meeting law. There's also ad hoc committees, all as necessary. I will tell you, I give rather conservative advice when it comes to ad hoc meetings, but there's a court case that supports the position that ad hoc meetings of committees, so long as there's not a quorum of the body, are not subject to the open meeting law. My conservative advice is to always err on the side of designating something subject to the open meeting law. But that's, me being a lawyer and a pessimist, but oftentimes you will have, I think it's very defensible, there are two council members.
use the mic?
Yeah, we can't hear you.
My apologies. Oftentimes, cities do have, if they don't have, a committee structure, they will appoint an interview committee. That's an ad hoc committee, and take the position that two members, so long as it's not a quorum, are able to meet applicants without having to subject that to an open meeting. And that, I think, is probably the majority position taken by cities across the state. Once that group winnows the applicant pool down to a pool of finalists, the finalist names become public then. And so typically cities will conduct council level interviews in an open meeting with those finalists, whether it's, again, 2 or 20. Typically, you're talking about less than half a dozen. But obviously, with council, you have a lot of flexibility in how you want to structure things.
What my request was, I wanted to be in the entire process, would be no different than what the Human Resources Committee, Jeff and Sue already did. Meet independently with staff to see all the applicants and what disqualified them, the same as they did. I don't have to be in part of the whole, you didn't have a human resource meeting, and I'm not asking to have one either. If you had one, I would like to be an observer.
But that creates a majority of the council.
If I'm an observer not saying anything,
I really would caution against that.
How about the designee, as Mr. Tallman stated earlier? So the fear factor I have is when the public finds out that two people made a decision to get it down to 2 applicants or 3 applicants, there's always that mystery, there's always that concern that's out there. So if somehow or another, there could be a cluster of people, and it doesn't, but the maximum of 2 council members, in this case, it would be the Human Resources Committee, obviously, and deputize 3 other people or something like that out there that are vowed to secrecy. They can't go out there. This is confidential information. I mean, this is what I'm trying to say.
I understand what you're saying there, and I will say some cities do that. The most recent department head hiring I went through was for a police chief. The council appointed an interview panel.
Yep.
Consisting of 2 council members. They had a law enforcement officer from a neighboring city and a member of, they have kind of a advisory police board. And so they had a member from that. That's certainly something the council could do if you wanted to say, let's have a group larger than the 2 council members, but it can't be 3 council members because then you've triggered all of the obligations of the open meeting law.
My question would be, would I be out of line to ask to see the 13 applicants?
I don't
See
think
why
so.
they were disqualified, the same as the other council members have already done.
And just to be clear, I don't think it's disqualified. They've ranked folks, and some folks didn't meet the minimum standards and have been pulled from that pool.
Okay,
But
just the wording,
no,
got it.
right, I just want to get that out there.
Glad you took
No,
it right off
that's
my
a good,
my mind. I
because
wanted
it's,
to point that out, too.
it's just who rose to the top.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ranked
They're
them.
still all applicants, it's just some are ranked higher.
Correct.
Well, and I think some you did
some-
reject for not meeting the minimums,
Right.
right? Yeah. So some were disqualified, but, yeah,
Right.
just want to make sure that's clear on the record.
Okay.
Maybe I muddied it more, but.
And
Is that a reasonable request that I'm asking?
Again, I'm going to give conservative advice to the extent that you have a quorum reviewing that, you open yourself up to claims that you didn't serially meet and come to some conclusion or some decision. So do I think it's legally defensible? Probably. Would I advise against it? Probably.
It seems strange to me because I'm not asking for anything different. I haven't communicated with them at all other than what we've just discussed tonight.
Again, could I defend it? Yes. Would I advise against it? Yes, just because my advice is always going to be not to give people bullets to shoot at you. I mean, that you need to gauge from a policy perspective what kind of, I don't want to say risk isn't necessarily the right word, but where the council wants to fall collectively as a council.
Mr. Mayor, could I make a follow-up quickly? In the spirit of cooperation, and when we look at it, all 5 of us here collectively, and we are serving our constituency, that's what we're here for. What better way to prove to our constituency that there is transparency and at least consider looking at, and that's all 5 council members, not just the 2 on the Human Resources Committee, to show that we are intending to have it as transparent as we possibly can and have a committee, as was stated by our legal counsel, a committee of several, only 2 will be only 2 from this council, and obviously that would be the Human Resources, but deputize 2 or 3 other people, if that's a working group of 5, it's just, a lot of other committees are 5, I'm just suggesting that as a number, but let those 5 go through the vetting process of doing it, and then the Human Resources makes that recommendation to go forward. It just seems like it's a lot easier for the public to accept that than it is if two people, it'd be no different than, and I'm not picking sides, but if Rick and I were the two human resources and the public would go out there, they'd have the same negative stigmatism about, oh my God, they're doing something, they're hiding something, they're doing something, so that's what I'm pleading.
I guess
That's what I'm pleading.
Dwayne, I don't understand what in this process do you feel there's a lack of transparency, and why do you automatically think that the public is going to think negative?
Because I know the public of this city.
process that we went through?
I know the pulse of this city rather well.
Maybe we just take a step back and explain that ranking process. I think I'm starting to understand the kind of the distinctions between the viewpoints here. There are two components to hiring. There's kind of an objective one and there's a subjective one, meeting a person, picking up on their personal skills, something that's not reflected on paper. So what's happened so far is the objective part. There's a ranking and a score assigned to educational components, and I have not reviewed that form, but
The training and experience.
and so there's particular categories, they assign numbers to those, and then it's a cumulative. That's how it ranks, the top 5. This is not just subjectively looking at an application saying, I like this one best. To be clear, that's not what's going on. And I don't know, Rena, if you want to speak to any of the classifications, but just so everybody understands how that initial pool would be.
Yeah. And that's a standard. Whenever people are on human resources committees that they analyze, it's done with numbers and equations and do a mathematical and say, these are the 3 or 4 or 5 that are there. But what's the magical number? How did we come up with 3? Was there a was there a succinct, differential between?
Well, we could do 5. I mean, the top 3 were at different levels, and then the 4 and 5 were down and out.
Yeah, there was a
But there's a substantial
big
difference
gap.
between the top 3 were
Yeah.
close, and then the next 2
Yep.
were in
And
your
so I guess
estimation.
my feeling about that, Dwayne, is, you go through the first 3, but if somehow we weren't satisfied, it doesn't preclude us from going further.
Okay, yeah.
But there was a pretty big difference in.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that was our thinking.
Well, we have to move and make at least
Yep.
2 decisions here. One is what to do with the, we've got 3. To me, I wouldn't care if we want to bring all 3 of them in front of the council. I mean, we're going to dwindle it from 3 to 2. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
We could open all 3 up to council and for interviews.
I think we
Let's make a decision
My
on that.
only thing, Jeff, is there may be somebody, if we tell them it's a completely public process,
Yes.
they may choose, somebody could choose to withdraw.
Withdraw, okay.
Because, and that's a risk we run in
Okay.
doing that
Well, let me ask,
process.
how are we going to do the ad hoc Human Resources Committee interviews? Who's that going to be open to?
It wouldn't
Just the
be,
two of
It
us?
would be whoever the
Just the
council would.
committee.
Just
set
the
to-
committee then, okay?
I think you want Nick and Judy on that committee as well, so they know who their boss could potentially be. You
Okay.
want them on that.
Right. Would we want Rena to sit in?
Not proper protocol.
And just
No?
point of experience, I encourage you not to have that interview panel be too large.
Okay.
Really, I think at some point you can start to impair that interaction with
Okay.
your applicants.
and I actually am going to disagree a little bit with Rena. I don't necessarily think Judy and Nick need to be on the committee. I think at some point, I always think it's nice if people have an opportunity to meet maybe the final candidates, but I don't think they necessarily have to be on the committee, just in my experience. But that's up to the council.
Yeah, doesn't make any. Well, how does the council feel? Just Sue and I interview these 3 and get it down to 2?
No.
Or do you want to bring all three of them in for open and risk losing one, two, or all three maybe?
And I would suggest if you're gonna just go straight to the open interview process, to help kind of prevent folks from withdrawing, explain to them that it's the three finalists being brought back. If that's the route the council goes, so that folks know their name's not gonna be public when there's still 12 people in the running.
Right.
That, their odds are better.
Okay. Those are the options.
If that's the route that goes, I pleaded to the five councils that, again, it just seems logical that a group of, as Adam stated, a group of, and he didn't mention a number, but for me, in all the years I've been involved in it, I've never really, that final decision has to be made by the right people and for the right reasons and stuff like that. But to, again, reiterate what I stated earlier, it just seems like there's, and I know that where your feelings are, Jeff, but it just does not seem logical in the mind of a lot of people, and rightfully so, that two people would get that down to it, and I didn't know that there was even going to be a movement. I thought it was going to probably be down to two, because that's what I heard, that two of you were going to get it, crop it from 3 down to 2. And, if that was the case, that there's 13 people that would want this job, and only 2 were brought up for the rest of us to be able to put a rubber stamp, that happened, I didn't have a choice to figure out who the public works director was the previous time, and we're not going to go and hash that again. The one that's with us now, I was deeply involved in that. But for us to assume that the two of you made that right decision without having me being involved in the interview or seeing the individual or something like that, it just seems morally and ethically wrong if I'm trying to represent the people of the city of Rockville, that I don't have a choice other than the two of you said, no matter which two it is, the two of you said this is the logical one. So which one of the two you want if I don't even get the application to look at or something like that? Because that's the way I have it right now in my mind. Like, I'll never get to see that application if we go forward the way it is right now. We're going to have blind faith
But Dwayne,
that the two of you.
I mean, I don't think it's uncommon. We hired a president of the college. We brought in 2 finalists from the search committee. You don't say, we asked everybody to interview every candidate. That typically is not how it works.
It is
So-
for
How many
me.
were on that search committee?
So,
How many were on that search committee?
larger than I think what Adam's suggesting, but yeah.
That's what we're trying to say.
Well, I think that we're going to hassle this thing out with human resources or person hired for this job. In my opinion, and this is mine, these 2, we were appointed there to look to do the interview, narrow it down. We got it down to 3. Now, we can take those 3 and we can interview them, but the whole council.
Who's we? Donnie?
The whole council.
Oh, the
can
whole council,
interview-
okay.
We want to interview all 3.
But that's
To me,
not what
I don't need to look at all these other ones because, like they stated, there's a point system, and some right away are disqualified. Same like when we did the maintenance. There's something, right away they're out. We got these 3, and I have not heard from the public that who's all involved in this. I said, the human resources, okay, they're working on that. That's anybody that's come to me. Now, there's an uproar from the citizens that we're not being open enough. I think we're wrong. This is their job as human resources to bring these 3 forward. We can interview all 3 if we wish to go that way, and then we're going to, done, public, or they can narrow it down to 2. But maybe it would be okay if I wanted to look at the interview, their application separate, I could do that?
No.
No, Adam, I couldn't, if I wanted to look at them. On my own, I couldn't look at them. Now no more, right? I just throw it, I'm not interested. I didn't want to have any.
My recommendation would not to be.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's fine, okay. But I think we're at this point now, let's go ahead and Sue and Jeff continue on, bring it forward, and then we can make the decision. Because otherwise, we'll be dragging this out. Everybody will see this the next month. I think we're going to live with it. The person that we're going to hire is going to show when you interview. You're going to be able to tell if he or she wants the job or not.
Just so it's clear in my mind, Don, I think I heard you say we, meaning all 5 council members, are going to get a choice to look at the duty interviewing?
If we want to, do we want to do it that way?
I thought I heard you say that we.
I'll state it again, 2 options. You can direct Sue and I to conduct the interview of these 3 and whittle it down to 2, or we can bring all 3
Yes.
to the full council. And if you don't like any of the candidates, the council has a majority votes, reject them all, and then you can start it
Go
over.
up to 4 or 5 and stuff like that. See, now there's movement.
Well,
That's
no,
not what I
that's
heard.
always been, that's what I, you haven't been listening, that's what I.
Oh, no. Don't
Yes.
go there. Let's listen real
Did
close.
say
Yes.
that we could bring the 3.
Okay, well, I thought I heard it saying
Or
that you
another-
2 are going to make a recommendation, said this is the 2. And then I wouldn't even have the interview, I wouldn't have, and I'm supposed to make a decision in a blind faith. Am I going to be able to see the final 2 or the final 3? Am I going to see that resume before I have to make a decision?
Again, I laid out the 2 options, we can bring all 3.
Final 2,
Yes.
And the answer is?
Bring the 2. We're gonna decide right here, I'm asking you to decide, but like Don says, we gotta move on.
Or we
Let's
can-
make a decision
yeah.
on this, let's,
or we could expand the committee. And I would suggest then we add somebody, I'm looking at, we could add somebody from already some existing committees. I'm looking at Scott. We could ask somebody from the EDA who's to serve on the committee and have a couple other people besides Jeff and I. And that's
for the
an option.
purposes of
The
3,
initial
interviewing
interviews.
3.
Yep.
Okay, that's I'm
Yep.
okay with that, if you wanna.
Or public volunteers?
Volunteer, we're not going to start, volunteers. If you got, then you start, all of a sudden, we've got this big group again here.
Would a committee up
Let's-
to 5, only 2 are council members? That's what I heard, Adam. Is
Well, yeah,
that
it can't be more than
realistic?
2 council, we can decide to, add a 3rd or 4th or 5th, I guess, but.
Well, I heard Adam, don't
would
make it a big
suggest
one.
Picking somebody who's active in city affairs, somebody on
And that was-
planning
that's why I
commission or
suggested
park and rec,
somebody
if
maybe,
Scott's going
right.
to. Or Bill Becker or
Yep.
somebody.
Is Scott interested?
2 words, hell no. We've got an HR department, an HR group that's supposed to be doing their job. Don't micromanage what they're supposed to be doing. Trust that they're gonna make good decisions. They're gonna bring the best candidates that they think they see fit. Let the government work the way it's supposed to work on it.
It's not normal to have a 2-person committee, that's why I'm saying that, because it's been a 2-person committee starting in 2013, I believe it was.
Well, that would be true most cities now, because a lot of them are 5-person.
I'm
So-
saying here in Rockville, it just went down to a 2-person
Right,
committee.
but I'm just saying it's not unusual. That's how most cities are, so.
Schaefer's be interested?
I'd be on it if somebody asked.
Would the council be willing to let Vince be on it? Former mayor, former commissioner?
For these last 3 interviews?
Okay.
Fine with that. I think we should, if that's the route we're going, then I'd recommend we ask another person, and I think maybe Bill Becker, Scott is saying no.
What did I just lose here? We're shifting it from the obligation of the 5 council or the 5 people that have governance right now to give it to somebody else? To do
No,
what?
this
To get
would
it from
be-
3 to 2 or from?
No.
Or,
Just to do the first interviews.
oh,
The first interview, add a citizen to the Human Resources Committee is what you were asking.
okay, yeah. I thought I wasn't going to get a chance again to see the applicant and look at that person in the
The
eye.
council's the one that votes whether or not we accept the final applicant. I mean, when it gets down to 2.
Okay,
Right.
Yep,
I thought I heard you say before that one of the options would be to bring it down to 3 and have the entire council interview the 3.
Yes.
Right.
So if you have a committee of 2 council members and 3 citizens, wouldn't they be doing the same thing?
3 down to 2.
Then I would say no, let the council do it.
Yeah.
If it's gonna be the same decisions made, it should be the council then making decisions.
I would
Okay.
say if you have it really narrowed down to 3 of the top candidates and they kind of separate themselves from the rest, then we go with the 3.
That in the form of a motion.
Okay.
I'll make that as a motion.
I'll second it. Motion been made and second to bring all 3 final candidates to the full council for interview and final decisions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say same. Motion passes.
Would that be the regular next meeting or a special?
I think
I
we're
think,
If it's a special
I think
meeting,
we
it's
should
special.
schedule a meeting
Yeah.
so we could do it.
I'd encourage a
sooner.
little discussion tonight too, to set times, you know,
How much time with each candidate?
yes, so that the council's got expectations. Also, that's something you can let the applicants know so that
Right.
they have some expectation of, am I going to be here for half an hour or an hour? Because some cities do very elaborate interview processes where they have applicants come through and, you know, meet staff, have an open house with the public after the interview, and I just encourage the council to figure out what you want now while you're here at an open meeting, rather than trying to coordinate something with Rena after you all leave here tonight.
I don't know. I got 20 minutes, 30 minutes per applicant.
Minimum of 30
30
minutes.
minutes, yes.
30?
I would say
I
minimum.
honestly think an hour, given the scope of the job, I think we should allot an hour.
For each candidate?
First gut feeling.
Most, the ones I've been involved in, you have a 45-minute actual interview, or up to 45 minutes, and then give a brief opportunity for that candidate to leave and a new one to enter, and they keep them in a different holding area. And so that when that new person comes on, that takes a little bit of a transition. So they're blocked an hour apart, but you actually put the interview in an appropriate amount of time to move them out and get the next one back in. That's worked the best for me in the last 2 years. I've done 2 of these. So,
Okay. I'm okay with that, I guess.
and it has to be an appropriate amount of time because the 5 of us are getting together for that. So we have to have enough lead time to tell the world that the 5 of us are getting together. So that takes some time, a minimum of. So is there a date?
2 days.
Have to have a minimum of what?
Well, if you
10
set a
hours?
date, you might as well forget the next week is
I was gonna say with Thanksgiving next week,
Thanksgiving,
so
you
that's
got your
probably-
5 or
Well, you
7 days
can't do
already.
it between now and then anyway, unless it's an
So-
emergency meeting, and it's not, it's going to be tough to call this an emergency meeting.
So it'll be in the first week of December at the earliest. I don't know what date, but that's what it would be.
Well, that would give us time though, because I think we also we should come up with a set of interview questions that we ask every
Yes.
candidate.
I did
And
print a bunch tonight so that
so,
I
May
was
we
going
be
to give it
allowed,
to you and say, you guys decide which questions you would like to answer.
may we personalize some of those?
Be careful, there's some things you can ask, you know that.
That is correct, and that needs to be circulated, and there's a checklist
that
from the
same
League of
thing.
Minnesota Cities.
Yep,
Been tested in court. These do you not ask.
I got,
But they also allow us to ask questions. I don't want to know the last time that somebody had a dilemma and how they fixed it. I want to know if that applicant has great capabilities of doing resolutions, ordinances, writing rules, preparing for, germane to that specific job, not just, something that's irrelevant.
One thing I've seen a couple councils do, which I actually thought was fairly helpful, is they asked each applicant at the beginning of their slot to take 5, 10, 15 minutes,
a brief presentation.
talk about themselves,
Yeah,
and
yes.
that's a
Opening
really good
introduction.
opportunity to see people's, ability to speak to an audience and engage folks, and then launch into the questions that are kind of predetermined in advance so that every applicant is treated the same.
Good idea. Yep.
I still sort of think we need an hour.
Yeah.
And allow 15 minutes in between, but I feel like 45 minutes, especially if you ask for that, is not very much time.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
If we end early, we end
Perhaps.
early, but
Yep, that's right.
I'd rather allot, like we felt like we had enough time than cutting it short.
Yep, okay.
As far as setting a time, wouldn't we have to have a time that the applicants can make too?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Probably have to, can we start at 5? Too early or not? 5 o'clock? What, should,
Totally up to you.
Tuesday night work?
Tuesday night, which,
First week of December, whatever?
December 8th, that's planning and zoning that night.
That's correct.
They meet the first week of the month? Monday then, or?
No, December 2nd.
Yeah.
Oh, December 2nd.
Second.
Okay, I thought you said December 8th.
December 8th is the second Tuesday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
And December 1st is the first Tuesday.
And the planning commission does not meet that night?
No.
Does that work with everybody?
That works for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
At 5 PM is your first one?
By 6 and 7, yeah.
Well, Sue wanted more time than a whole hour and 15
And then
minutes.
15 minutes in between.
Oh, really? Okay. So-
And I do like Adam's idea of asking them to do 5 to 10 minutes. Just talk about
Okay,
themselves and their experience. And then we'd have, I think we should have a list of questions that you ask every candidate in the same way. It doesn't preclude asking maybe a clarification on an answer or something, but I think to be consistent about what we're asking every person.
And who'll have the input of what those questions are?
I'll give you the sample questions and everybody kind of just highlight which ones you'd like and
As long as, I would think that list can be circulated to the whole council.
Yeah.
Individually, give your feedback to Rena, and
well,
she'll,
just whichever ones are highlighted, that's the ones we use.
and then I would suggest that each council member, rotate that question and just
Yep.
go until
Yes.
you've exhausted the list.
Yeah, not the same person asks the same question. That's
Right.
paramount. That's very
Okay.
important.
all right. So 5, 6:15, and 7:30,
Yeah.
the times, okay. You circulate the questions and get the responses back, put a deadline on it so that everybody knows. That'll be Thanksgiving weekend then, huh, the weekend before? So you want the questions like by Wednesday? That's next Wednesday?
Yep.
Okay. By next Wednesday, you have to have questions to Rena
Okay,
because of Thanksgiving, or to,
city staff. Yeah.
okay. Anything else on that?
I guess on that, I mean, if, just to Nick and Judy, if the whole council's doing it, I mean, if they want to sit in on the interviews, is that an issue?
It's going to be an open meeting, so, one thing to kind of think about in advance is the applicants can all sit in here. I'd encourage you to ask them not to. You can't force them to leave, but typically, you want everybody to have a fair shake and not sit in. Otherwise, that first person's disadvantaged because everybody else following
Right.
knows the question and is able to prepare.
Okay. Yep. Vince?
Did I miss out on something here? You're giving this direction to Rena?
No, to staff, city staff.
Oh,
I corrected it. Somebody said Rena, and I said, no, city staff.
okay. I just thought I missed that you had hired her.
You heard it the right time, but I I modified that.
Okay.
Good point. There's also does the applicant get to see the questions beforehand?
No, when we interviewed on the fire department, we didn't. We had the questions we asked. You know, everyone gets asked the same question, but by different individuals.
How do you see how they, okay, so you want them to be able to off the cuff verify that?
right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, and I don't mean minutes before, but as they walk in, and if I'm not fluent at my speaking, and that individual over there has no idea what I just said, you're doing a disadvantage to that individual to try to answer it. You know, so if we have a canned question, those canned questions shall be in front of them if you want to have that candidate do justice. You know?
Well, I'm fine with that when they sit down, if you want to hand them a list of
so
questions.
interviews-
I just don't think we give it to them in advance.
Interviews we did on the fire department and when we maintenance, we had the questions, you answered it, and then rated 1 through 5, 1 through 10, or what. She'd ask the first question, second, third, next time.
I thought
For the
we
next
did it
employee,
the
first
normal
it went around. That's how he did.
Yeah.
You know, so they never had any questions in front of them.
That's one case. We had a situation that was just traumatic at the watershed district when somebody could not fluently speak the choice of words, and the individual at the other end had a glazed look on their face and said, "Oh my God, how am I supposed to answer this question?" He asked for clarification. The individual mumbled again, and finally then the chairperson stepped in. So the first one we did not, the next ones we did have. So that could have been tested. So the important thing is if we have standard canned questions that all of us, one will use one, the next one, somebody else will use the one, but we should have it so that they have it in front of them so they can actually see it. And then we can explain or ask to clarification or something like that, but I think that's very important.
Once they sit down.
Once they sit down, right.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
I have no problem with that.
Are we done with that? Okay. The issue of interim city administrator, I asked Rena when she announced her resignation months ago if she'd stay on if we wanted her to. I asked her today if she would. She said she would. And so we would have that option, to have somebody stay on with experience and the ability to train a new person, depending on how long Rena's willing to stay on. Not sure we have the staff, or staff has the ability to assume that responsibility. This process may take to the end of the year or longer. But
I'll just say, I think it's very gracious that Rena was willing to do it, and I think, and I'm very grateful that she is willing to do it. So I think that I would make a motion that we extend.
But we have not talked any specifics. You understand, I've already given up health insurance with the city because I'm now on Medicare. So that is not a cost to the city anymore. November 20th is supposed to be my last date. That's the contract end date. If I've completed my last year of work satisfactorily, I would expect an increase either to the next step or above. We haven't talked about any of that. I don't know, I'm getting some really bad feelings here tonight. I don't know that I want to stay. But, I mean, maybe it's something the mayor, the HR committee and I can talk about.
okay.
I would like to advance something I did a lot of thought process.
Still has to go to council,
If
yeah.
I may, and that is currently Rena is getting at or about $36.36 per hour in her base fee. That's public knowledge. And I asked Rena for that number a while back, and that's what she shared with me. It's sad that 2 months went by and someone didn't at least look at what's going to happen this Friday. This Friday, when we have Rena walking out the door and wish her well in her next endeavor in life, we should have had someone talk to the logical one, and that's Judy. We have time between now and Monday, or now and Friday night, to ask Judy, would you consider being the interim administrator? She's qualified. She doesn't have the credentialing in terms of years of service, and she doesn't have the designation of a plaque on the wall that she graduated from this class or that class, but that is irrelevant. She knows this city, she understands it. Currently, Judy is getting at or about $24 and some odd change above that. About a halfways between is a number that would be close to 30. We apply, our lowest value that we were going to be that we advertised was $29.36 per hour. That's I believe that's the threshold of what we were wanting to pay. So my recommendation is to have, if it's the staff, Rena, or if it's the human resources, to advance Judy this offer of $29.36 per hour to be our interim acting city administrator with duties and responsibilities the same as Verena has right now, with the compensation that I just talked about, until we have somebody seated, and all of that should be done in paper, not verbally, to cover ourselves so we don't have the same dilemma that Cold Spring had and other people have, then they don't do it right. And that's my recommendation, and at this stage of the game, I'll make that in the form of a motion.
I would second that. Provided she's.
Accept, yeah, with the assumption that she accepts that. And if not, then we have to go and have an emergency meeting if the toilet doesn't flush or whatever, or something like that. But to have an interim director, to have an interim administrator, an acting city administrator does not need to be there 24/7. There's living proof that we had this before, something like that. And I think that's our best way, and that makes us five make a decision. If we are concerned about finding a qualified person, that we have that decision to be made rather rapidly. There's no reason in the world that we can't have somebody seated here. The challenge is, after we select who it is, and hopefully it'll be unanimous, we still have to give that individual an opportunity to have a timely spot to leave where they're employed. You know, just because we find somebody and we agree with a dollar value, they still have to cover their stuff too. So for us to go, I don't think it's going to go past, I shudder to thought it has to be past January 31st, but there's no reason for us not to be able to have somebody. And maybe one of the candidates are sitting there doing nothing and waiting for us to go and could start tomorrow, for all I know. But anyways, that's my motion at this point, and that would be with the caveat that she does not have the exempt status. Rena has exempt status, but that would not then prevail in my motion. That would mean that she'd have flex hours and all of that, and 40 hours. I don't know exactly what exempt status all pertains to, but that's what I've heard. When you have an interim, do not give them the exempt status, and maybe Adam can help us out if you know offhand, or Rena, what does exempt status mean?
Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, so somebody who's exempt cannot have overtime, and you pay them a salary, not an hourly wage.
Okay, but this would be an hourly, so she would not have exempt status.
Right, she'd be
Okay.
non-exempt.
That's what my motion entails.
Why would we make her not exempt?
To not give her exempt status. To not.
I'm asking, why would we not give her exempt status? So you're asking her to do the roles and functions, but not be exempt? Just on a temporary basis?
She would get overtime.
Well, and it also creates issues when you've got folks bouncing back and forth. If that option does come to fruition, my recommendation would be to, if she's not exempt, to keep her there. Otherwise, you've got to deal with PTO and all that, and it's quite frankly a mess.
And that's what I learned from the league.
Okay, well, first of all, Dwayne, I'd like to respond to your claim that nobody took any action to deal with possibility we didn't have somebody November 20th, because the HR committee did discuss with Rena, and Rena agreed to fill in temporarily, so.
So there was a HR committee meeting?
No.
Oh, I thought I heard you say that there was a.
The HR committee personnel took action to cover for the city, so. And we also asked Judy if she's interested in the position, she's not interested in the position. We didn't ask her, I didn't ask her specifically if she would cover it on an interim basis, so that's something we'd have to ask her about, so just to clarify.
I would say, and the reason I had seconded it is because that's the way Cold Spring is handling it, and they're on an interim basis, and they have a subordinate filling in
Yeah.
in that capacity right now.
That's how we did it at the watershed district.
Right.
And that's done a lot.
But they also didn't, the situation didn't lend itself to have the sitting city administrator stay on either in Cold Spring, so their options were less. so. Okay, a motion's been made and second to ask Judy to take on those city administrators' responsibility on an interim basis
On a non-exempt
and
status.
a non-exempt status at the $29.
$9.36.
Let's do a roll call vote. Rick?
Yes, I,
Dwayne?
Aye.
Nay?
Aye.
And I just want to say, it's not because I don't think Judy can do it necessarily, but I think we're talking to go, I do think we have a lot of year-end things, and we're talking, asking one staff person to do an awful lot, when in fact we have another option that we could have considered, and that is to keep 2 staff people on to help get all the year-end work done. And that's why I voted no. It has nothing to say about Judy, but I think we're asking her to take on a whole lot for one person.
I'd like to hear, I think the mayor is going to tell us if that prevailed or not, or something like that, in motion. It prevailed, correct?
It did prevail.
Okay, on a 3-2 vote. And then I'm going to just follow up that says, if that's the case, that Judy does accept it and she's bombarded, we can hire temp. We can hire temps that are qualified to do the billings and all of that good stuff. So it's not like we're just hand tying ourselves. I heard Rena says, I don't know if I want to be here. That's a signal. She wants to retire. She wants to start writing her book. Give her that right.
Dwayne, I think you're putting words in her mouth, since Jeff and I each had a conversation with her. And yes, she does, but she also said she would stay on. So you're
Okay.
sort of speaking for Rena right now and
Might I
saying
ask-
something that,
Okay.
I would like 2 other things. Judy has not been able to use up all of her PTO over her allotted amount. I would like to make sure she's okay.
Can't hear you.
I would like to make sure that Judy is allowed to keep, we have, if you've had so many hours of PTO and you go over it, and end of your anniversary, you lose it. I don't want her to lose stuff,
Okay.
okay?
A one-time commitment or a one-time deviation
Yep.
from our rules.
The other one is Debbie. She's 31 and a half. She's part-time. Could you at least allow her to be full-time during this time, so Judy's not here one day all by herself?
Least we can do. Obvious.
What are we going to do if Judy doesn't accept it?
Have a special meeting.
Rena, what's your, think Judy will do it or not?
I think we should, let's find out here before, Rena's got enough going on her mind now, we've been bombarding her tonight and that with this. If Judy says no, we have to make a decision. We can either try and offer it to Rena if she wants maybe 4 hours a day or something, or we go out and find somebody else. But right now, we made the decision.
Thank you.
We're gonna offer Judy it, and we're gonna go from there. We've got the interview process set up, and we're gonna go forward from there. There's no need to sit here and decide, argue back and forth on what's going on. Everybody's had their points here, and I think now we got the interview, Jeff and Sue, everybody, if we got it going the way we want to go, and let's do it.
Yep.
All right. I think we have to close temporary.
are we still on human resources?
Do we have
That's where
anything?
we were.
That's where we were at.
I don't think we had anything else.
I do have one request that I had for Human Resources earlier, and that's to have the very smooth transition when Rena walks out the door on Friday. Anything for key access cards to the credit cards if she has. I have not an idea. But there should be someone of us five, Human Resources, that's why I put HR on there, because we're as high. So if it was subordinate of Rena's, Rena would be the individual that would be doing all of that. But most importantly, the technology department to have, by Friday night, have that technology department change passwords and stuff like that. And that's just a checklist. I mean, it's nothing personal from Rena's standpoint or from my standpoint. It's just that we're doing due diligence. And we need to have a signature on Friday night that these things have happened or something like that. And that's just what I'm asking of the council. Let us make sure we designated somebody. And I think it would be only right for us to have the personnel committee determine between the two of them.
Human resources.
Or, I'm sorry, Human Resources. I'm losing it here. But it's vitally important. That's transparency. That's accountability. So please, let's see this happening. Sue,
That's
you're
fine.
the chair.
That's completely fine. I will come
You will
here
take care of that?
Friday, and
Sue-
we'll make sure it happens.
Thank you very much, Sue.
I can give it to you now. I actually have it done.
Well,
Yeah.
What I wanted to bring up is I was given some information by a resident that had reminded me that there's state statutes concerning, it's state statute 574.23 under the 2015 Minnesota statutes, examination of accounts of public officers. In case of the filing of a new official bond or other security, the expiration of the term of office, or the death, resignation, or removal of the officer. Keeps going on. The public body shall make or cause to be made a thorough examination of the bonded officer's accounts. So I don't know if you're all aware of that, but this is from the state auditor's office. It's on there, and I can send you an email with all the information. It's also in the handbook of Minnesota Cities, chapter 26, financial reports, accounting and auditing. They all refer to the same thing, so we have that responsibility to do that at this exit also. Couldn't find where that was done in the event of Amy's death, the former financial person back in 2009.
What are you saying we need to examine?
State statute 574.23, examination of accounts of public officers. Required to examine the accounts of such officers shall make or cause to be made a thorough examination of the bonded officer's accounts.
But I don't know what accounts you're talking about.
I'm just reading you the state
No,
statute.
I
didn't get this. I was given this to present.
I think it's typically a form that the city's auditor signs off on, and then you have the incoming officer sign off on that as well. Not minimizing the state requirement, but it's in some sense a formality when you have publicly audited city like that.
Yep. And that is in the state statute, Adam, and I don't believe that should be taken too lightly or something like that. Again, it is so different when we have somebody the resignation. There's no reason for us to believe that there's anything wrong with the account or something like that. But the state statute said this is a requirement, and I think that's what I hear. And so, if we had a different situation where we had to go and send somebody down the road, I'd be a lot less hesitant to make this a smooth. This is a smooth operation for us to allow Rena to do what she wants to do or something like that. But this is an obligation that we as a council member have, and that is the five of us collectively need to abide by the state statutes. And the state statute said this is one of the requirements. So I think what I heard Mr. Tallman say is, what's the wishes of this council? Do we have an outside entity selected? Doesn't say when. I would assume sooner rather than later. We can't wait until next March or something like that when we have our regular audit, but to have an audit that says the books are in order. It's simple.
Just to clarify, I don't believe state law requires an additional audit.
Anytime that there's 2,500 and the person that is either a administrator / treasurer, state statutes. My friend, I look at the same state statutes that you do. You have the right to have an opinion and charge for it. I don't. I have an opinion. I'm just relaying that opinion. That's what the state statute says.
I'll just add that this originally came from the state auditor's office.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'm telling you, I'm fairly confident that anytime an officer leaves, the city's not required to have an audit because of that.
Because of a high-ranking staff person leaving?
I encourage
Returns?
you to call the city's auditor. I believe this is really just a formality that the auditor signs off on a form. The incoming officer will eventually sign off on that same document.
Okay. But there's a requirement that we as a council have to do something.
Yes.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I call the auditor. The auditor will take
Okay.
care of it.
Thanks for that.
Just to clarify, it's not a full-blown
Yeah,
audit.
Yeah,
State's a
All right.
thorough examination.
yeah. Call the auditor and we got it figured out.
What's the formal terminology? We close this public meeting, go into closed session, or temporarily close it?
So we closed the meeting in October to talk about potential pending litigation under the attorney-client privilege. We do the same here.
Okay.
It's related to the Archon development, the Brentwood Hills.
Yeah, Vince.
If there's another open forum, I just have another
Why-
couple words.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
We have one other finished item, don't we? We have the water and sewer fee that.
That's done.
Consent
Oh,
agenda.
okay, because that's different than the one that was sent to me, but this was modified since.
And I'm still Vince Schaefer from 541 Caroline Lane. I just have a few words on the water system we talked about. And, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, you may want to hang on to your chair for this one, because I want to publicly thank you and the city council for finally making some movement on this water financing problem that we have. And I'm hearing that, and I also know that city staff does have a lot of work at the end of the year. And if this is put off, I've waited 7 years for it, another month or two is not going to make any difference. Thank you.
Thanks, Vince.
Scott?
Just a brief note, Scott Stenseth, Rockville Park and Rec Chair, Mayor and City Council. I just want to remind everybody that on Sunday, December 6th, there's going to be the Rockville Saturday at the Rockville Fire Hall. It's going to be from 1 o'clock until 3 o'clock p.m. in the afternoon. Santa will be there for free pictures. There'll be treats, there'll be games, there'll be tours of the firehouse, and of course, there'll be fire trucks for kids to climb on. So just to remind everybody about it on Saturday, December 6th. Or, I'm sorry, Sunday, December 6th.
It's Scott, I think I replied back, I'm going to participate, but if not, I'm just telling you now, I'm going to
Great.
be there.
Cool.
Yeah,
Use all
you
the
had
hands
asked
we
me
can
and
get.
I was traveling and I
Yep.
thought I sent it, but I'll be there.
Got it. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, so again, the terminology, we just temporarily close the public meeting?
Yep,
We need a
under the
motion?
attorney-client privilege for pending litigation.
Okay,
We go into recess.
okay. I make a motion that the council meeting go into recess for closed meeting regarding litigation.
Seconded.
Motion been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion passes.